What is everybody? Welcome back to the Transparency. My name is Lan, and I'll be your host today. The title of this episode is Idaho4, and the TURVEY says, yep, straight from the Family Feud. So welcome, come on in. You're getting started right here at 9 a.m. on this lovely Tuesday, Monday, whatever the hell it is. I believe it is a Tuesday. So we're just jumping right into it. Thank you, moderators, subscribers, lurkers, members, all of you guys for being here. Last night, fabulous episode. Give it up for the Custody Queens off the clock. You know, I always thought it was the Custody Queens off the cuff. Did they ever change that? Because why did I always think it was the Custody Queens off the cuff? Anyways, so they did a fabulous job. Brent Turvey did the majority of the talking, which is important because that's who we want to hear from them. And so right there, style, presentation, flow, they get an A. So go ahead and give the Custody Queens an A for presentation, flow. The questions that were asked, I thought Ron asked some really, really good questions. He did really, really good follow-up questions. So kudos, Ron. I know that the girls worked a lot of hours to put it together, to prep for it, and it showed. So I think that the community as a whole is supporting each other, and it is so important if you want to get to the truth of things. Sharing information, supporting each other, letting people, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see that? Hey, you got to take a look at this. And what I love about it is Dr. Turvey wanted to do a live interview. You want to know why I would want to do a live interview? I don't want you chopping up my words. I don't want you chopping up my sentences. I want the context all around. Where were we at in that part of the interview? What was being said? And so Dr. Turvey was like, I want this live episode. Well, you want to know why he wants that live episode? All the things I just said, but guess who's always chopping and pasting and cutting? Mainstream media. And now they're going to sit here and tell you, well, I'm not able to do like a 2.5 hour live interview. Really? You can't get that approved? Well, how about like an hour? How about 45 minutes? How about 30 minutes? Okay, you can't get a segment. And if you want to pre-record, that's fine. And you want to slide it into like a slot, sure. But he didn't want his words chopped up and skewed. And he says it at the end of their interview. He says, people may you can't just take my words and twist them and make them what you want to. And we're going to get into that. So here we go. Brent Turvey right off the rip. And Taylor, let's talk about it. Now, I am going to put this on 1.25 speed, as you can see.
Subsequent to the revelation of the plea agreement. How do I put this? I think I am fairly shocked, as is I think the world, that a defense attorney would come out publicly and admonish one of their own experts for discussing exculpatory evidence for their client. And it begs the question as to whether or not she's representing Cobra or something else. So, because that's not in his best interests. His best interests obviously are served by full disclosure of all exculpatory evidence and testing.
Okay, right there. The first point he wants to bring up is, what is Brian Cover's, what's in it that's best for him? Best for the client. So put a number 1 down if you're taking notes. Best for the client. And according to Turvey, it is number 1, what is best for your client? And it's for basically truth and transparency. Okay, transparency. He says something that's going to come, it's really interesting when it's going to be asked, do you think that Brian Kober knew everything? Do you think that Brian Kober knew everything? Meaning everything that was provided to Ann Taylor, everything that she ever had, does he know so that he can make the best informed decision, as ultimately it was his choice, right, to sign on the dotted line? And the answer he gives is no, he didn't. because we just got data dumped right before the plea. Okay, and we're going to get into that.
Of all potentially exculpatory evidence. And that's all any expert should be, advocating for. If you're advocating for truth and justice and full disclosure and transparency, which are sort of the hallmarks of good scientific practice, that's what you're advocating for. And when you hire somebody like me, that's what you're saying to the world. Hey, we're bringing in independent experts who are independent, who are going to give us advice about what evidence exists and what evidence does not exist.
Hear that right there? We're going to give you advice. We're also advising the lawyer. You work for the lawyer in a sense, okay? And so we're giving you advice because you're asking me as an expert witness, independent. You're asking me because you're questioning something. And Brent Turvey says that Ann Taylor knew this case like an encyclopedia, that she knew the case better than Brent Turvey. And she should, because Brent Turvey got in the case so much later than she did. But he was basically saying that for a reason, to say that she knew what to question. She knew what was questionable. She had a very strong grasp of that. Okay.
What evidence should be tested and what evidence might be beneficial to understanding the full narrative of the case. And the idea that you would leave physical evidence untested that has potential exculpatory value is shocking. It's shocking.
Okay. He comes right out the gate and he says that you would want to leave stuff untested is shocking. Well, we find out during the episode that shocking, untested evidence is hair. You guys, hair in the hand of Ethan Chapin. Clenched fist, hair in his hand. Okay. Dude, flashbacks immediately of the Delphi case. Why? If you guys have been following me on that case. Hair around, it was like wrapped around Abby's hand, okay? And they tried to say, first of all, the hair belonged to the sister of Libby. And they're trying to say that it was from the sweatshirt that she was wearing and that it had a clump of hair, okay? And when I'm saying a clump of hair, you guys all know what we're talking about. When you brush your hair, okay, and you guys, you'll get like the tangled stuff, whatever, or like, come on, out of like your hair ties, stuff like that, okay? But guess what? Guess what? That was supposedly a brand new hoodie. At the end of the day, it's not, that would be on the prosecution to explain that hair and try to explain that away. But if you don't hammer, come on, man, right? A hair, like they're out in the middle. Dude, they were undressed, redressed. Give me a break. Those girls out there. So then we call it to the Brian Koberger case, and here literally, Ethan has a clump of hair, in which what's the big thing for me is that how this was downplayed by the investigators. First of all, the CSI people, right? Then you have the autopsy. So you got the ME, okay? And then it would have been the prosecution, right? And then it would have been the defense team. How many people did that go through? Nobody tested this hair. And it was said not to be Ryan Kohlberger's.
And so the idea that you would admonish somebody for saying, hey, there's this really important piece of untested evidence that we need to talk about.
That's the untested evidence. So when you're going to take your pen and you're going to say the number 2 thing that Dr. Turvey brings up is he's talking about the untested hair in Ethan Chapin's hand. Okay. Untested hair. And he said that's a recurring theme here in this case. It blows my mind away. Okay. Because remember when I was telling you guys, it's like at the beginning, they already knew what was up. And so the way they went about investigating this case is they knew what to stay away from. Brent Turvey says the same fucking thing. All right. He says the same thing. Let's just hear his words versus my words.
That's sort of, again, it's problematic and it raises real questions for me. But let me explain something else. Let's flip it and say it this way. What would it say about an expert that you hired who sat on exculpatory evidence and didn't say anything publicly, and later on that evidence was discovered and tested and exculpated a client or a defendant? What would you say about the entire team of experts that said nothing and sat blithely by while the judicial machine sort of steamrolled the defendant?
Yeah. Sitting at a table, like I've said, just like you're going to have your round table with your prosecution, but before you even get the prosecutor involved, you have your round table with the police. How do you sit at a round table and ignore stuff that's literally hitting you in the face? How do you ignore it? Well, you're either really bad at your job, you're corrupt, or you're both. Those are your three options. There is no other option. Either you're incompetent, you're corrupt, or you're both. That's ABC. There is no option D. There is no option E. So on multiple choice, those are your options. And that would hold then true for the defense team.
Do not think very highly of them.
What?
I would not think very highly of them at all.
Exactly. So while in this moment, there are people who are chagrined by this discussion of publicly available material, I am more concerned about those who would rather suppress it.
Mainstream media. Mainstream media is the first people that come to my mind when you want to talk about suppressing this, because it's out here. It's out here. It's factual. There was hair in Ethan's hand. What are you going to do about it? Well, if you're Kevin Fixler, when you're interviewing people, why aren't you stating everything that they say? Is it not good for your narrative? Brian Enton, same thing. When these mainstream media people, that's why they're not getting the interviews anymore. And I love it, because mainstream media, there is no more mainstream media. Okay. All the mainstream people and their cable networks, they came to YouTube. Go check out the top 40 YouTube most paid YouTubers. Okay. Go check them out. Just type in one day when you're bored, the top 40 YouTube earners or something like that. Okay. And one day we're going to talk about that top 40 list. But for now.
And is it safe to say, Dr. Turvey, that this is the first time a defense attorney in a case that you've worked on has...
Great follow-up question right there. Give it up for our girl, Sam. Woo, that right there. Again, I'm giving grades here. An A+. And not just an A. Sammy gets an A+ for that shit. Why? It's perfect timing with what he just said. It's the follow-up to say, has this ever happened to you in your 30-year career?
Come out and made such a statement?
I've never seen it before in any case, ever, in my 30-year history. I mean, if you can name that case, I'd love to know.
Love it. He's not backing away from it. He's like, I haven't just heard it in my career. I haven't heard it ever. And if you've heard about it, please let me know. Awesome job. Great job, Sam.
I've seen experts for the state and for the defense who've come out and made massive blunders, massive errors, massive failure to disclose misconduct, incorrect interpretations, looking at photographs upside down and interpreting them incorrectly. That happens all the time. And you never see a defense attorney coming out and blasting them for it. Or even the state often might do it a little bit, but not the defense, not their own expert. So it really starts to beg the question, what is the purpose of hiding this evidence? What is the purpose of not wanting to discuss it? And to be very clear, the sort of the admonishment is generic. It's only that I'm discussing things, not
generic, boilerplate, not specific, vague.
Not that I'm wrong, not that I'm lying, not that I'm incompetent, not that I am biased, or not that I am doing something that violates a court order. None of that is happening. If it were true that I were violating her confidentiality agreement, there would be severe and immediate legal consequences, as there should be. All right. The problem is Brady versus Maryland, which is the Supreme Court rule.
Love it. Love the answer. Love the answer. If I was doing something wrong, Taylor would have my ass, is what he's saying. I'd be facing immediate legal consequences. Okay. Now remember, there's a difference. There was a gag order, aka a non-dissemination order. And so we need to stop getting away from saying gag, and we need to start using the right proper words, which, like, if there's a protective order out there, if there's a non-dissemination order out there, okay? And because words matter. Okay. Nobody was gagged in this case. There was a non-dissemination order. Okay. And that non-dissemination order was changed at least once. All right. And then aside to that non-dissemination order, when Ann Taylor got her experts and she sought them out and vetted them like you would, like, why are you seeking people out? Like, you're not doing your homework. Like, you can't come out and say that. If you're going to say that, then you're just, I mean, you might as well just sign away the ineffective assistance of counsel. Okay. That you wouldn't be vetting your experts. And why are you going and seeking them out? But she had a non-disclosure agreement with her experts. And that's something that's totally different. That has nothing to do with the courts at all. Okay.
Ruling, which states that you can't you have to disclose everything that is potentially exculpatory. And
so what he wants to talk about here is he's like, okay, first of all, let's talk about the Brady rule. Okay. And I have a duty to disclose everything that could be exculpating to the client. So that's the first thing that he's basically protected by. Okay. A great follow-up here would have been to ask about this NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And maybe one day for you to talk to him again, it would be, hey, I'm sure as a expert, you've signed NDAs before. How did Ann's differ? And he might not even be able to talk about that. How did that differ from ones that you signed in the past? Because this is a case that's, allegedly done and over with. And I guess in Ann's, from my understanding, is she had to release you from it. Okay. So maybe but again, you're not even supposed to be talking about the fact that there ever even is an NDA. When you get into a non-disclosure agreement, you're usually not even discussing the fact that there is a non-disclosure agreement. That's usually part of it. And then I want to know, when he would have signed his non-disclosure agreement, how many pages was it? Was it truly an in-depth one that said that if there was to be legal consequences here ever, who had jurisdiction? Did Idaho have jurisdiction? Did you sign off that Idaho would have jurisdiction?
The person who decides that is not the prosecution, nor even the judge necessarily. It's usually, if the judge is going to make that determination, they do it in camera, alone, in their chambers, or whatever. But generally, you're supposed to disclose everything that's potentially exculpatory and let the defense do their own investigation of it. So everything that I've discussed has already been disclosed by the state. She's just unhappy that I'm discussing it for some reason, and then put me on blast with the other two attorneys to sort of, I think her attempt was to try to say, well, the last line says it all, which is his credibility should be viewed through this lens or whatever. And I think it should be. I think my credibility should be viewed through that lens, which is, will I knowingly sit on exculpatory evidence? No, I will not.
Boom. Fucking love it right there. Talk about either a master spinner, master splinter. Either he's a master spinner right here, or this is, to me, just like boom. What he just said there was boom, which is, wait a second. First of all, yes, you should be viewing me through the lens that you're talking about. And that lens is showing you that I won't sit and be quiet on exculpatory information. And that's my job. So please view me through that. I look at Brent Turvey here, and that he is defending his reputation. Number one, right? He's defending his integrity. And I think that he has that right?
Despite whatever consequences might come. And I have, at any given time, I have between 35 and 40 open cases. I just finished a huge report in a big case today. Spent the last 2 weeks.
35 to 40 open cases. When people say, Lana, how do you do it? Because I do believe that I could take out a mother load. Okay. 35 to 40 open cases. And you're usually going to stagger them. Okay. Because you know where you're at in the different cases. You know if you're at just the beginning stages of, case A through Z. Okay. You know if you're about to be going into trial, you know where you're at. Okay. And so, but yeah, 35 to 40, that's a mother load.
Working on it. And my clients hire me for that objectivity, for that impartiality, and because they know that I have a reputation for having integrity in front of a jury and in front of the court. And I have to say, it really begs the question as to the credibility of those experts or those attorneys or those participants or those commentators who are arguing for the suppression of this evidence.
God, I love that. God. He said the quiet part out loud. Okay? He said, wait a second. Why? How is anybody commenting negatively about what I'm putting out, what I'm talking about? Y'all said that you wanted this truth. Y'all were covering this case for what? Why do people cover cases? What's wrong with you? Why are you talking about true crime? Why are you talking about any of this? I'm out here telling you, okay, that this is not what you have all been either purposely putting out or I don't know. Y'all, what y'all have been reporting is nuts. There's no objectivity here.
That's interesting to me. But there are no specific, she's made no specific allegations of specific information. And I think I know why that is. So.
And that was
and I think I know why that is. Brent Turvey, why would that be? Why would that be? Well, because that would get Ann Taylor in trouble. Right? Because she's the one with the obligation to, hey, there's a fine line here. Okay. And it's called client attorney privilege. Okay. But basically, he's insinuated that if she goes too far, she can get herself into trouble.
Also interesting that she hasn't spoke up since following the plea, which was almost getting close into that year mark. I thought that.
And all she did was speak up and say, we're not answering any questions. We're never going to talk about this case. Which I think is the most interesting part about that statement is what she said about potentially like when the gag, or not the gag, but the non-dissemination order was going to be lifted. That, hey, you guys can try to call or do whatever, but we're not speaking on this. That was her statement. But prior to that, there was no statement. Okay.
That was interesting. But you're 100% right. She doesn't try to discredit you. She doesn't try to say that you're wrong. She basically.
Well, I think since she tries to discredit him, I think that she tries to discredit him by saying that people might want to think twice before working with him. Right. So I do think she definitely tries to discredit him in that aspect, but she does it she doesn't give a reason. It's like, hey, don't have that woman babysit for your kids. Why? Because she told the world that I'm a cheapskate. I only paid her $10 an hour. You know what I mean? Be specific. Like, what do you mean? Don't hire her. What'd she do? You know what I'm saying? Like,
it just says she's also attacking her own team, which is wild. I mean, that's kind of, you have the whole world trying to attack you for the most part, and you're
loved it right there, Kristen. Great comment. You have the whole world attacking you and your client, and now you're attacking your expert.
trying to prove BK's innocence, but hey, let's start attacking our own, which was
What's
so
interesting is, think about what it's going to do to her. I mean, remember that she's not like this clean defense attorney. She's got a conflict of interest starting out of the gate because she represented victim family members when she was working for the public defender.
Okay, so I will say this. I would have held that in my back pocket right there to ask him why he believes that versus that was a hit piece put on Ann. Okay. Because she didn't represent just the office did. And of course the office had to represent them because they needed public defenders. And so the office represented her, but Ann Taylor actually never represented them. Okay. But see, that's how freaking shit gets around.
But she also has she worked as a magistrate and a prosecutor, I think, at some point. People who do these things as lawyers, they get confused sometimes about their role. They get confused, and their attitude and their posture doesn't change sufficiently when they change their role or their onus? What is their onus? Is their onus to
Think about somebody that has been advocating for Brian's innocence. Not only was she representing Brian, Ann Taylor was speaking out and saying, Brian is innocent, Your Honor. This defense team believes in Brian's innocence. You don't have to say that ever, not once. Okay? Alan Jackson and them said it when Karen Reed was innocent. Delphi, they said it.
the defense to their client, to the state, to the people who elected them, whatever, they get confused. And so when you have this, we call role strain, when you have multiple roles pulling on you, you can wind up saying and doing things that you probably shouldn't. What I'm also thinking about is any person who would ever think of working as an expert for Ann Taylor in the future is probably going to say no.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming.
And see, I think that personally, like that was his dig on her. Okay. Just like I think, Ann Taylor took some digs. So right there, I believe that I chuck that talk right there, you guys, put it in a nice little bubble. And that was Turvey's, hit back. That's all I take from that. Okay.
Assuming that the first time you heard this admonishment was publicly. You haven't had any direct contact with her since before the plea?
Sam, this was a great question.
I was just going to say that. Sam, again, I'm telling you, the follow-ups that came after what Turvey just said, they are listening. These three people right here, they did what the most important thing is to do on cross-examination, which is to listen. You have to listen to what somebody is saying to you in order to then, boom, you have to listen to someone's direct examination, okay? They are listening. They are lawyers. They are listening to what he is saying. And then they're asking very pertinent follow-up questions. And that is how you get the max out of an interview. Again, A+ there, Sam. Great follow-up. Right now I have an A+, and an A+ right now.
Answer is no, of course not. I mean, if you were going to, let me back up and say this. If you were going to admonish an expert for some behavior, you would probably want to talk to them first about what they did and why, and specifically what they did and why, as part of what's going on.
That's a respect thing. Think about that. Ann Taylor, did you not respect this man when you hired him? Right? I couldn't imagine, like, why wouldn't I reach out to Carson? Hey, Carson. And then say whatever. I'm just going to go blast Carson without asking her about something that she supposedly did. That I'm like, hey, as a mod for me, what the fuck are you doing? And everybody knows, dude, you don't get those emails from me. Okay. It's not what modding here is about. But I try to like put myself in like the shoes of, okay, how could I see this going down? And what I would see is going down is me, writing a fucking post about Carson, okay, who I have like so much respect for, right? But then can you imagine me just writing a post and not talking to her, but just blasting her? Like, why? Like, wouldn't I want to have some type of understanding of like, hey, what's going on? What's up with this book? But so this to me is about communication. This to me is about trust. And this to me is about respect. Okay. And if you make a triangle and you have communication, trust, and respect in your triangle, that creates the middle of the triangle, which is loyalty. You need to have all three of those things in order to have loyalty, even possible. Okay. When you're loyal to somebody, it's because you have awesome communication, you have trust, and you have respect. And then that's loyalty. Okay, that's my take on my triangle. Okay. But
our relationship dramatically deteriorated once she made this surprise plea deal, which surprised most of the team.
Okay, now this is a really good part of the show. Everything changed when she made this knee-jerk 180 decision.
Well, there's a guilt phase and then there's a mitigation phase in the death penalty case. And the mitigation,
Remember I was talking about you guys about this the other night? I was like, dude, the penalty phase, okay, versus the guilt phase. The penalty phase is the mitigating phase. Listen to what he's about to say here.
experts, we never met them, and even the guilt phase experts who were trying to reconstruct the crime or determine the events and the actions, we didn't talk to each other. We were very much compartmentalized. So I wouldn't even.
That's normal. To a point, and I would love to hear more about that. But so there's not this big round table. Everyone has their role, but you don't get to see the other person's role.
Have anything to share from them other than the findings that are in the defense autopsy report. There's not an autopsy evaluation done by a defense expert, and I have access to that, but I obviously haven't shared that with anybody.
That's a perfect lead into, I think, the next question. I know that this is something I'm super interested in, and most people in this chat are as well. How did you get involved with this case, Dr. Turvey?
Well, I mean, it's not a secret that I was hired, so I can certainly discuss that. It's not a secret that I wrote a report, nor are my findings a secret because they were publicized in January with all the disclosures. In fact, there was an article written about my findings in Fox News back in January 2025, I think. Right? Yeah, 2025. And I was one of the only experts whose findings were disclosed to the public. How did I get involved? Well, I was
right there. He leaves a little. He puts out a little nugget there. How did Fox News in 2025? We need to find this. When Fox News put this out about Brent Turvey, 2025. This is when I believe they were gearing up to write this Dateline and produce it for May. Okay, but that Fox News 2025 article. Okay. We need to take a look at that. We need to find out who wrote that. It's really important. I'm going to tell you why.
I would say collegial, good friends and collegial with Becca Barlow, who was hired on early on as a DNA expert. I worked a case with her in California, and she asked to bring me on to evaluate the placement of the scabbard, all right, because they were concerned that there's evidence that it was planted because of the things that have all come to light.
Okay, so Becca Barlow and him had that relationship. Okay. Now think about this. Ann Taylor releases a statement and makes all three of them sign it, right?
And then once I did that, once I was brought on board for that, they expanded my role and they expanded my analysis to a full crime scene analysis.
So he was. Do you hear that? That's really important. His role expanded. So he was first. That's what I wanted to know. He was first brought in just for the placement of the sheath, and like I said, like this whole being planted, and because of the case, and then his role expanded.
So that we could make determinations with certainty. And remember, I prepared a report in this case, which was submitted to Ann Taylor, I think at least twice. One evening I was traveling, I was working really late, and I submitted it. We had a deadline we were coming up against in January of 2025. 2020, whatever it was, 2025. And I had to meet that deadline. And so she reviewed it, she accepted it, and she put it on file. So these findings that I've given and the extent and breadth of my examination are not some great mystery or some great reduction as she tried to suggest in her.
So take a look at this. He gives Ann Taylor his report. Ann Taylor puts it on file, meaning she placed it into the record. Okay. That means that the docket has it. And yes, it was then put under seal. Okay. So you have the prosecution that would have it in his hands then, right? And then you have the e-filing system. So anybody that could look something up with the courts that maybe had access to the court shit. When you're saying because then boom, Fox News is coming out with saying Brent Turvey's name right after that.
In her admonition, which was bizarre. trying to pretend, oh, well, he's just this guy. We just kind of hired him and just kind of did this. And you didn't vet me completely. You didn't ask for a report, didn't expand my role, didn't request a report that was X number of pages long and, submit that to the court as true and just and accurate.
Right there. Wait a second. I'm just some random. Dr. Turvey is so right. Not only did you bring me in on this case, but then you expanded my role. And before you would have ever done this, you have to do your job and your due diligence as a lawyer. And your due diligence is to know, like you clearly are trusting this guy. Somebody's bringing it to you. Hey, I worked with him before. He's very, really good. Like, look at this. Look at this. Either somebody's bringing you that information or you're doing your personal vetting. Experts are a dime a dozen, in my opinion. But the good experts, they're not a dime a dozen.
Come on. It defies credibility. Her posture at this point defies credibility. So that's how I got involved. And that was the nature and range and scope of my examination. Quite extensive.
Basically, he's saying that, Ann Taylor, you just made yourself look bad by trying to put me down. Okay. You're making yourself look bad. Like crazy bad. Because you picked me. That's why I always think it's crazy when people want to talk about their ex-girlfriends or boyfriends. And I'm like, you picked the motherfucker person, fucking date them. But they're crazy. So you date crazy people. Like you're God. And so this is one of those moments where it's just like, exactly. Okay. That saying, like, you are who you keep as friends. When your parents tell you, be careful who you pick as your friends.
And do you recall exactly what time frame was it that you were at?
I like this by Kristen. She's trying to get this time frame nailed down because me and Kristen are all about like this timeline. We're just trying to have this accurate timeline. So
actually hired on as the expert?
What would be like in man?
I have it.
Let me just take a look. I can tell you right now. I can tell you. Let me go here. Let me just make sure I don't say anything wrong. All right. So I was brought in October 2024, but I was interviewed multiple times, at least twice before then, to screen me. My report was submitted in January 22nd, 2025.
January 2nd. Heh. Told you it was October.
Does that help?
Yeah,
That helps.
that helps
See? Love it, Kristen. Putting that timeline together.
quite a bit.
Yep.
So I know that there was a lot of discussion, a lot of complaints by Ann Taylor to the court about a defense being slow to give evidence over. Did that kind of put the defense team
The prosecution, not the defense, the prosecution.
the prosecution turning him over to the defense? Yeah. Did that kind of put the defense under the gun a bit?
Not just that. I mean, right before the plea, we got this massive data dump that had not been disclosed to us prior, and that I have not seen, and have not examined. We had a whole. No, of course.
Ann Taylor brings this up. Okay, you guys have to remember this. Remember the 30-page filing. Okay. Ann Taylor's 30-page filing asking for a continuation, and part of that was the Dateline leak. Okay. Well, they also bring up this data dump. You guys, this is the problem with that. And Ann Taylor Ann Taylor, I don't know if you just can't oral argue like what the fuck you're doing, but it's like, Your Honor, discovery was closed and has been closed, but they have a duty to disclose things. Okay. Things that will be exculpatory. Okay. So are we sitting here and saying that in this massive data dump that you just provided us, that this is all the exculpatory shit? Like, none of this stuff should be able to be used because there was a discovery deadline. This is what I'm not understanding. Okay. So my follow-up to Brent Turvey, if I ever get to speak to him one day, is going to be bringing this up like, hey, can I ask you a question about this data dump? I understand that you guys got it right before this plea deal. You said you didn't have a chance to look at it, right? How do you know that it was even going to be stuff that pertained to like your role in the case, right? But at the end of the day, I'm confused because when was the certificate of discovery? When did that close out?
Of course not, because the plea happened right after that. So when I left her office the last time, the weekend before the Thursday before the weekend of the plea agreement being announced, we had all kinds of plans set in motion, as you would, because we were going to trial, and all kinds of plans for examining those disclosures, all kinds of plans for other examinations for other items of evidence to check on chain of custody and things like that. There was a bunch of work to be done. And that is not some secret. That's that disclosure of that data dump requires examination by the experts. So.
And Ann Taylor brought this up, but she didn't. She needed to explain it, or like go hard with it more. Like, but what she says is, Your Honor, I haven't even had a chance to look at it. I don't even know what it is. That's how she went about it. And it's like, first of all, what do you mean? If I would get something sent to me in a case like this, think about that. If I'm waiting, hey, Dr. Moore, I need you to send me something. And he sends it to me, and then I just don't fucking open it. Or when he would have sent me something I would ask for, and I open it, I'm like, oh my God, this is like 1,000 pages. I thought this was only going to be like a 5-page report. Holy shit, what is all this shit? You know? And then I'm skimming all through it, and I'm like, I'll know the gist of it so that I can explain that and say, Your Honor, why am I just now getting this stuff that I've asked for and that they've claimed that they've turned it over and everything that exists about it? That is the stuff. That's how you would have to hit back with not just saying, Your Honor, I just got a data dump and I haven't even opened it. I don't even know what's in it. What is that? That reminds me of Dana Bose. That reminds me of little like inexperienced lawyer crap. I'm sorry, but that's just awful. Awful to go in there and say that. Or I would have to say, hey, right before I walked in this door, I haven't even a chance to open it because I literally just got it sent to my email at 11:12 and it's noon. Like, come on. You're fighting for your client's life. This is a death penalty case. You pound and you get loud and you make yourself known.
No. Do you know what was in that data dump?
I didn't look at it.
Well, no. I mean, did they say,
nope.
You know, here are photos, here are videos, nothing. You just
no. She was not like that. So she wasn't. She you know, the version of Ann Taylor that I know bears no resemblance to the Ann Taylor that took the plea and is talking in public right now. I don't know this person at all. I don't recognize her at all.
Well,
because she kept everybody in there, like, and that's what I've noticed that they do in Idaho. Okay, I've actually have experience. I could speak on this. Do you understand that a lawyer that worked for the public defender's office and was taking cases, okay, was not a public defender and doing a civil case there at the end for Dr. Moore, and literally was lying to him and his wife in my presence, in my whole home camera system, caught it all, saying that we have interviewed this person that you're speaking about, Eldora Gatchel, more than once. She doesn't drive anymore. She doesn't do this, saying all this random, crazy, wild shit, knowing that she never, ever sent their PI to go interview this person ever. How the fuck can you say that to a client in telling them and saying this stuff for the purpose to get them to settle or to get them to default judge? You are lying to them. I've never seen something like this in my entire life. I just happened to, I didn't insert myself. It happened in front of me. And then I speak up on it to the Moores and I said, get on the phone right now and call your private eye and ask him for the reports, because that never happened. Eldora Gatchel is not driving anymore. None of that makes any sense. I said, call your PI. Sure as shit. He's like, what are you talking about? No, I never interviewed Eldora Gatchel. I said, exactly. Who does that? These lawyers in Idaho. They all work together with the prosecution, with the magistrates, and with the judge. It's wild. I've never seen anything like it. It's corrupt.
So when you last met with her, you had no indication that the plea was going to happen. And how did you actually find out about the plea? Through the media? How did
I found out from a colleague? The colleague texted me and said, Hey, Brent, I remember you were working on this case. I remember reading the articles, I remember this, I remember you mentioning it. What's going on? There's a plea agreement. Is that true? And I like wrote back and be like, no way. No way there's a plea. There's no way. It's not happening. And then over the next 10 minutes, it was like bing, 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 bing. I was getting all kinds of text messages from different colleagues and different friends of mine and people who work for me. We all found out with the rest of the world.
Is it normal? Oh, is it normal?
Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
No, I was just saying, last time we talked, you were renting like a VRBO. You had bags, you had your clothes, like you were ready to go.
Yeah, of course. But let me back up and say something that hasn't been said before. One, the reason I was hired for this case is I was one of the only people on the whole case who's ever worked a mass homicide before. I've worked dozens. Well, a dozen or more. Somewhere between 12 and 20. If you look at my resume, you can go count.
Mass homicide, multiple. Okay.
Them. That's the first thing. And I'm working a couple right now. Actually, I just picked up another one the other day. So that's one of the reasons I was brought in, because I have expertise and experience on these kinds of complex mass homicide events. All right. The second thing is that when you are on a death penalty case, it is intensive. Everybody's heads are in the huddle. Okay. Everybody is part of the process, because if they're not, you can miss something. And the consequences are life and death. So there's a lot of great articles on the death penalty issue and the work that's required and the focus that's required. And what they say is, quote, death is different, unquote. So when you have a death penalty case, you are responsible in a way.
Ann Taylor used that. She used the death is different. What Brent Turvey is saying here, he provided her to use and to attach it as one of her attachments, exhibits in, I believe, getting the continuation.
That you're not in other cases, right? Because there's going to be appeals and there's going to be, you can do it and then you can get a second chance. You can get a couple more bites at the apple if there's a problem or if there's a procedural error or an innocence issue. In a death penalty case, it's dangerous. So that means there has to be a very high level of trust and communication between the people working on the case. And the fact that none of the defense experts were contacted or consulted as part of this deal, in fact, were misled by the defense attorneys as to whether or not there was going to be a plea deal is stunning. It's a stunning context to be in. I've only experienced.
Like, basically how I feel what he's talking about here is, it's like you just got the bid to go to the NCAA tournament because you got picked for March Madness. Okay. And it's like, woo, we're going to the dance. Okay. We made it. All of our hard work is paid off. We're, going to the dance. And then you decide, or your coach decides without talking to you guys, that, you know what? We're going to decline going. What? What do you mean? And we're not going to go compete. Wait, what? I can't ever imagine a head coach making that type of a decision without consulting her assistants, okay, or his assistants and the players, right? Or just consulting with one person, because you hired us all, right? And it's our advice as to why you're making different moves and what you're doing. Now, all of a sudden, none of that matters. And you're going to ask somebody and you're going to talk 1v1 to somebody that, did you take advantage of this person when you went to this 1v1? Nobody knows what was said between Ann Taylor and Brian Koberger.
This kind of thing one time before, sort of, but this is pretty stunning.
How were you misled?
What?
How were you misled? Exactly.
Well, as I said,
Great question.
The entire posture of the case was going to trial, and that changed on the weekend and was announced to the world without being.
Think about that as a professional. The plea deal is not even, there's no plea deal on the table. It's never been talked about. This case was, as far as all these people are concerned, like the Josiah Roloffses, the Cyrays, Turvey. Plea deal? Like, that's not even on the radar. That's not even in like these are our options, guys. What are we going to do? And so what he's saying to you guys is misled. misled because we're all planning our schedules. Okay. We all have put a lot of time into this, blah, blah, blah. And it's not about like, it has nothing to do with money here. Okay. We're putting our name to something. We're putting our work and our name to something. Why the fuck are we going backwards?
Discussed among anyone.
Why are we going left when everything tells us to go right? How are you justifying that in your brain? Who's ever making the decision? At the end of the day, yes, somebody has to make the final call. I get it.
And, you know,
But you're not taught, like, think about it. Wouldn't it weigh on your heart and your brain? And you're laying down in bed and you don't think that this is something that you would want to be consulting and discussing with. I get it. You have Bicca Barlow. I get it that you have massive. I get that. But you brought in all these other people because they're the experts that you're relying on to tell you about the case. So that you're not over here being like seeing tunnel vision or like, hey, these people believe this because this is X, Y, and Z. Okay. It's not just me. And your client is telling you that he's innocent and they didn't do it. So all these things. And now all of a sudden you're going left and everybody on the team thinks we're going right. Like full speed ahead. This wasn't just somebody pumping the brakes. This was somebody that completely did a 180.
There's a lot of ways to describe that, but one is just, it's misleading everybody else to let them think that there's one pathway that's happening, and that causes them to to engage in activity or make decisions and choices and planning and protocol and logistics surrounding that and action plans that cause them to do massive amounts of work and commit to certain timeframes, and then to sort of have the rug pulled out from underneath you for some reason without any explanation, then or now, as to why. Misleading is a gentle way of saying it. Misleading is a kind word.
So you don't have any information since the time the plea was entered as to what changed or why they went that direction.
Well, I directly asked that question.
Right there. I directly asked that question because that's the question to ask. With everything that we know, this is the right path. So what did you learn that we don't know, Anne? Enlighten me. Enlighten me, because you're making the wrong decision. Because off of everything that you have here, like, what are you doing? And that's why the question then comes up is like, hey, what did your client tell you that he fucking did it? Because what do you have that we don't have?
And I was told nothing. Nothing changed.
Nothing changed. You guys, if nothing changed, then there's a huge problem. And so you can either put on your list that she was threatened, okay? That she was this, that she was that. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. It's like, again, sports world for me. You guys, we're beating a team by 20 points, and we're doing it by full court pressing. Let's go drop back into a 2-3 zone, and then let the white boys just shoot us out of the gym with threes. Why the fuck would we ever stop with the full court press? Because actually, if you press in a ball game, if you do it the right way, you can actually slow down a ball game. Okay, people think in a press we're trying to speed it up. You can actually slow it down. You can make it so that they can't get the ball out and go, after makes. It's what's going on here. And she could say, well, hey, I've lost every single hearing. I've lost everything we put forward. I'm getting, boom, 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 boom. But we haven't put forward anything. Like, we haven't put forward they've all set themselves up to literally fall at trial. The house of cards will fall because they're lying. Okay. And that's the biggest boom moment that you could ever ask for a jury to see is the lies. Holy shit. You're lying. That's what got us all in the Karen Reed case, right? It was all the lie. It was the investigation. Karen Reed's a free woman, okay, because of the investigation.
Was Hitler or the court, were they encouraging the negotiations regarding the plea deal, or there's so many different theories that we've all heard online. Some that Hitler was encouraging the two sides to mediate, see if they can come to a plea deal, or was it just completely like you had no clue that these negotiations? It sounds like to me you had no clue that these negotiations were going to go down that weekend.
None at all, and it's none at all, and that's sort of, in my perspective, and I don't. Ann Taylor doesn't have that much experience working death penalty cases. I do. I've done this many years, 30 years now, and in my experience, it is completely inappropriate to start making major decisions like that without first getting a sense of where the evidence really is at and having a team meeting and talking about it. And that didn't happen. I will just say this, without betraying any confidence, I can say that I asked multiple times. I asked at least twice and was given a third version of events. Every single time there was a discussion about this after the fact, I got a different answer.
Now that piqued my interest. Every time after the fact.
To what the precise sequence of events was.
Every time after the fact, I have now 3 different versions of how this all played out. What? That's some fickle shit right there. 3 different versions. Okay, you guys, that means lies. Okay, when you can't keep your story straight. How did this play out? I'm curious about that.
And in a normal case, like I said, I have clients that I've worked with for 10, 15 years. I got clients who I work with constantly on every case they work. I got clients who I trust them.
His clients are the lawyers. Okay, that's how this works. The ethical ways that you go about something is that the lawyer and the expert have the contract. Okay.
To do anything with me. I trust them to watch my kids. I trust them to watch my cats. I trust them with everything, because over time and temperance, you learn sort of the ethical character of the people you're working with, and that's why you work with them again, because you don't have any problems with the way they conduct themselves, and you know that when you're not in the room, the best evidence and the best ethical posture is going to be taken. In this case, I have zero faith and confidence in Ann Taylor in terms of her posture, because every single time I've spoken with her, she's given a different version of events about whether and why and how. And so,
isn't that wild? But see, like that wasn't the case. And so you have to ask yourself a really important question here, which is, if you just pretty much got on roll, in October, like you're talked to right before October of 2024, then you only really have, like, think about it, during the holidays, but you have November, December, and then he's issuing a report January 2nd of 2025. Okay. And then however much dealing they had between January 2nd and 2025 to literally, I would love to know, May 1st of 2025, whenever the Dateline episode came out. I think it was like May 8th. Okay, of 2025. I would love to know, God, would I love to know, to open up Turvey's fucking black book and to see where he dedicated his time to his research and what he was doing from January 2nd of 2025 to May 8th, okay, of 2025. Very, very curious. And then take a separate look at May 8th after that to the plea deal. And I would love to know the breakdowns.
at this moment, I can't violate any privilege with you because I don't know what the truth is, because I have not been told the truth yet that I can tell. I've been given 3 different versions of events relating specifically to your question. When did the deal start? When did they start? And how did they get Brian to agree to it? And the involvement of Hitler. And I'm not a legal expert. I know what my role is, and I won't know what my
See, I'm not a legal expert. Okay. There's a difference between a legal expert and his role. And he just said, what are those 3 things? So we're going to rewind it right here so you guys can hear that again.
When did they start? And how did they get versions of events relating specifically to your question? When did the deal start?
When did the deal start? Number 1, when did the deal start? Number 2.
When did they start? And how did they get Brian to agree to it? And
how did they get Brian to agree to it?
The involvement of Hitler.
And the involvement of Hitler.
And I'm not a legal expert. I know what my role is, and I know what my onus is to. I know that my first onus is to being first we start with, you have to do your due diligence in every case, because that's what satisfies due process, and due process is a requirement of the Constitution.
Your due diligence. I need to see the material. I need to look at the material. I need to do my due diligence first before I can ever tell you what I think about something. I need the material.
If you don't follow that logic, you have no business being an expert or being involved in the criminal justice system. Due diligence equals due process equals constitutionality. Okay. I don't know. That's the extent of my my grasp of my situation or my role. And I don't know what the legal realities are around Dan Taylor taking this case. I don't know what the legal realities are of whether or not Hitler was involved and how he was involved, the judge or the prosecutor. And I suspect that it was done in
right there. He's like, I don't know. So right now when he says, I suspect, he's speculating. Here you go.
such a way that was problematic, which is why I'm getting 3 different versions. All right, that's the problem.
He's saying that I suspect that it was problematic, that all of this was problematic because he's getting 3 different versions. Now think about this. What I take from this is that, holy shit, this was a group effort here. This is what's best for the state of Idaho, and you're going to get on board with this, and that's a plea deal. Okay. So that would mean that the judge and it's like, none of you guys have a say now. Okay. This is how this is going down. And trust me, who is going to look bad? Who's getting pressure from, how is the pressure train really flowing here? We're not going to let our feds look bad again. So who would be pushing that? Because the feds were going to look like absolute shit. Okay. So I personally believe that there is strong evidence, okay, that the feds are behind the leak. Strong evidence. Okay. You have federal agents that are located in Coeur d'Alene, CDA. That's where Shane Bishop was hanging out. Shane Bishop was working on the Dan Moore, Brian Drake case with Jennifer Drake. She was contacting and speaking with Shane Bishop over a dozen times because they were going to do a Dateline special with the civil case. And so I told the Moores, oh, well, Dateline never does an episode. They'll always ask you if you want to be a part of it. Have you been called yet? And this is when I'm just straight up blasting all this shit in that case, like proving that the investigators in the Idaho4 case totally fucked up that case, are so bad, and they're the ones that are interviewing and collecting video surveillance and putting timelines together in the Idaho4 case that totally fucked up the Bonners Ferry case. The Bonners Ferry case, it has something way, this is not a chiropractor versus chiropractor case. And so what's truly going on here? The AG's office, we got problems.
So I'm not disclosing anything
And this is speculation. And he says that. He's like, I'd be, speculating on.
because I got nothing to disclose. I just don't know what the truth is. I'm
Don't know what the truth is. I have 3 different versions. And it all pertains to, when did the deal start? How did you get Brian Colbert to agree to this? And the involvement, and when, like, Hitler's involvement, the judge's involvement.
unshocked and appalled as the rest of you, which is why I was happy to discuss the publicly disclosed elements of this case as they relate to chain of custody for the sheath and as they relate to the untested DNA evidence from the hair found in Ethan's hand. All this was obscured in different ways. And so bringing that to light is actually not a violation, it's a responsibility. And if you don't think that's your responsibility, please, God, stay out of this profession.
We are going to get there.
God, I love it. If you don't think this is your responsibility, then say the fuck out of this discussion. I'll say the fuck part, okay? I love it. You guys, we ask questions. We ask questions. And if you don't want to ask these questions, because if you're just willing to accept something that does not make any sense, that is your prerogative. Go be on land fucking of the, yep, sure. Like, I mean, whatever you want to call that land. I don't know what that land is. Okay, but I am not on the island of when 1 + 1 that Idaho wants to tell us that equals 5, I'm not eating that. I'm not like, yep, that sounds great. Nothing to see here. Continue on. We the people, if we stick together, a lot can happen. But all it takes is just a couple people that are selfish and want to make a name for themselves. And that, yeah, I'll only put out stories that are one-sided. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do, like, that's the shit that's fucking sick. That's why I love YouTube. YouTube has finally evened the playing field. And that's why it's imperative when we say, like, hey, click the subscribe button. It's free. Okay. It's free to subscribe. Would you rather have stuff like this being circulated? Make your own decisions, but at least here be informed. Okay. Or do you just want that 5-minute clip that MSM's going to put out there? So subscribing to an independent channel is important. Even when you don't agree with everything, you at least have to see the fundamentals here and the foundation. Like, that's fundamentals to me, is the foundation. And you're not going to get if you don't get that from mainstream media, there's always a narrative. Well, our narrative here is truth and transparency. And you get transparency through what? Going and getting actually here's everything. You now make your decision.
Absolutely. So I got something, because I'm an appellate attorney. I do primarily civil appeals, family law, and so forth. But I certainly understand the appellate process, and I know that with criminal appeals, one big avenue for challenging even a plea is ineffective assistance of counsel. Now, as I understand it, a lot of times defense attorneys are almost encouraging of their clients. Hey, you need to pursue this. You need to look at ineffective assistance of counsel. Get with an appellate attorney or post-judgment attorney. Yep. Is that your experience in general?
Let's just talk in general, not about this particular case.
Okay.
So that we can dial in. All right. In general, I am often called in appellate contexts for major cases, death penalty cases, or LWOP, life without parole cases, to do a review to determine whether or not, let's say, for example, if the attorney had hired an expert such as myself at the time of the trial, using those standard practices, using those protocols and procedures that are available at the time, using the science available at the time, would they have discovered the evidence that was missed? That's one of the reasons why I have a library that's worth about 30 grand, because I collect old forensic and investigative textbooks, because sometimes I'm asked to go back to 1970. Sometimes I'm focused on 1980. Sometimes it's 2005. What were the practice standards at the time? So this is a very normal involvement for me. We call it IAC, ineffective assistance of counsel. And if you can demonstrate that the attorney was ineffective in terms of hiring experts or using experts or investigating evidence, it's a big deal. Like, for example, I do a lot of casework in Kansas, and they had I can't remember the stupid rule of the case, but it was a case involving a cell phone evaluation. And the defense attorney did not have the cell phone extracted and examined. It was sitting in police holding. And when the appellate attorney got involved, they found a bunch of stuff on it, apparently. And so they used that. They took that all the way to the Supreme Court of Kansas, who ruled that negligent failure to engage an expert to examine critical evidence is actually a reversible error, evidencing ineffective assistance of counsel.
Scott Peterson case. That's what I thought about immediately when I thought about that.
So your question is apropos, and it is absolutely relevant to the present case that we're in. Imagine, again, an expert who did not want to have that hair tested, right? How do you argue that?
I think we all shit our pants when we
How about this? I love it. Kristen's like, we all shit our pants and watch Turvey spit out his drink.
read that.
Woo! Kristen for the win there. Bonus points. Since it wasn't a question yet, it was a statement. 5 bonus points there for Kristen. Keeping track here. I gave you guys, you have an A, an A+, an A+, and now 5 bonus points. And I pretty much hit everybody here with, what I said. Sam had some amazing follow-ups. Ron doing some good job about getting the clarity on, like, when he's making a statement and he's like, well, how? Or like, why? Awesome. And right there, though, 5 bonus points for the we all about shit our pants. Look at Turvey. One more time.
How do you argue that?
I think we all shit our pants when we read that in Chris's book. Excuse me,
Wow.
Put that on a blooper right there. Put that on your closing.
That's literally what I think most of us did. We were all reading it together to late hours of the night, texting each other, going, "There's hair in his fist."
It's not just that there's hair in his hand, okay? Because this is really important to understand the context. I'm glad we're bringing this up. The hair in the hand was described in investigative and forensic reports as debris. There's no debris. Debris indicates like multiple different types of small, sort of maybe commercial material, maybe hair, maybe dust, maybe pieces of paint or carpet, things like that. A bunch of different stuff. Debris. Okay.
Fuck yeah, I'm gonna clip that part. Yeah, like fucking debris, like it's fucking shit. There you go, Debris. Take that, motherfucker. Brent Turvey, Debris. Debris. Debricks. Bricks. If you know, you know. That one was for you, Boston.
This was just a clump of hair in Ethan's right hand. And the hand slipped down into the space between the mattress and the wall. And the blood went down his arm, and it glued the hair to his hand, and it glued this more hair to the actual bed frame. And I didn't know it was there because it wasn't in the reports and it wasn't being discussed until I actually went to Moscow and examined the evidence. I examined the bed frame myself and all the other evidence in the case.
Can you walk us through that when you went to the locker with, I think Payne escorted you, right?
They were all there. We had everybody was there. We had Payne and another guy, and we had the defense investigator taking pictures, and I took pictures, and this is not some secret I built for it. Somebody can want to go look at it. They can see it's in my report that I actually went there and documented everything before I came to my conclusions. And one of the things I found was this huge amount of blood with a bunch of hair, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And they're like, oh yeah, that's the hair. So it was not evident in the documentation that it wasn't evident in the documentation that I had, nor in the investigative reports, nor in the autopsy report. It was written in such a way to obscure that fact, which in my view is problematic. And of course,
okay, so go out and find me where Payne is talking about the fact that Payne should be reporting in his reports. What he did is I took Ann Taylor and Brent Turvey to the evidence locker room for them to examine evidence. Please go find me out of the 319 reports that we have from Moscow Police Department. Okay, I have them all printed out. Please, if anybody wants a job, okay, I'm looking for someone to take the 319 police reports, okay, and label them the name of the officer, like the name of the officer's report _ date, or it's date _ name of the officer _ name of like what the report is about. Let me know. I'll make it worth your while.
At the time, everybody else thought it was problematic too. So it was, this is not secret. This is something that everybody knows. It was submitted to the FBI for macroscopic, not microscopic, but macroscopic examination, which means
totally something different. Macro and micro. We've learned this. We learned those terms in grade school, maybe high school. Macro, micro. Okay. I'm going to teach Jax about macro and micro this week.
he's looking at the physical features of the hair, the length, the color, the shape, the curls, all that good stuff that you can describe. And they excluded it as coming from Brian Koberger. In other words,
chair. I about fell out of my chair last night. I'm like fucking dead. People excluded Brian Koberger. When was that report done? I'm gonna have to pull out my damn lab book. So I made a lab book of all the lab shit, the 2,000 pages. My lab book is done. Excuse me? Hair in Ethan's hand is not Brian Koberger's hair. They excluded him. Excuse me?
they could tell this did not belong to Brian Koberger. Wrong color, too long, all that good stuff. Okay. Now the next question is, let's test it and find out whose it is. Nobody wanted to test it. And that is also not secret because it was never tested. Because it was never tested, we can infer that nobody wanted it tested, not either side.
So Ann
Why
did
would
not want that.
Who out of the 120 people that worked this case, okay, was just like, why? Nobody said, why aren't we testing the hair in Ethan's hand? Effing ludicrous, man. Little John and Luda are here.
Tested. Ann did not want that hair tested.
Well, it didn't get tested.
Great answer there. Great answer there. Because you can't say that because you can't talk about their conversation, but well, it didn't get tested.
And she knew about it.
And she knew about it. Ready? But she wanted that damn Acer laptop. That would have been my follow-up. But let me get this straight. She wanted the Lacer laptop to be like she wanted her personal hands on that Acer laptop, but she didn't want to get her hands all up in and excuse me. Like, what about where's Bicca Barlow? Bicca Barlow's all about freaking this type of shit. Bicca, where are you like demanding that? Fuck Ann at this point. Bicca Barlow, that is your expertise there, in my opinion. Why you we're brought in on this case is, you know, the last thing I will ever do is hire yes man and yes women. I need somebody that can ring my bell. I don't need someone that's gonna, huh, Atlanta, that sounds great. Oh my God, yeah. Fucking boring is that.
So that's the inference. There's no violation of privilege here. This is something that we know existed, didn't get tested.
See? I already know how he has to answer questions, and he's doing a fucking phenomenal job of a question is thrown to him, and he knows how he can answer it to not violate his freaking gag. His personal non-disclosure, his with Ann, not with the courts. He has nothing. No. Okay. He could do whatever he wants. It was not tested. Ann knew about it. My question would be like, well, did you tell Ann?
And they knew about it. So
Did you suggest that it should be tested?
See?
vehemently.
See right there, Ron? That's why you my man. That's Ron, do you see what he just did there? That's the question. And he says, yeah. Yeah.
And they knew about it. So
Did you suggest that it should be tested?
vehemently. Multiple times.
Multiple times. Why do you have this man on your team? And then he says something that is just takes my breath away. We're coming up to when he starts talking about, because I want to write a new book and I'm going to fucking write it. I'm going to say, I'm writing a law book and I'm not a lawyer. Because things need to change. You don't ever ask a question. This is what lawyers tell you. We're not going to ask questions that we don't know the answer to. Huh? You know what I think about that? Absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Was even one of the last things I said. As I was walking out the door. I will just tell you this in general. I would not want to be on the stand with such a piece of evidence untested. I would not to be on the stand having to explain why. If the prosecution had, well, Dr. Turvey, if this was such an important piece of evidence, why wasn't it tested?
Exactly.
That would be
Did you-
a death blow. Testimony.
You understand that that's exactly how he would have worded to Ann Taylor right there? Hey, DB, I'm going to get into it because, yes, I do believe that you, on cross-examination, it's going to hold true, though, too, because I'm going to tell you why and how. Because those questions have already been circulating in your brain, and you have already found out the answer. So there should be, like, no, like, that's one way you can get people in shit. If you're after the truth, you're after the truth, you know? I'm there to defend my client's rights, right? I'm not there to get guilty people off, you know? But the truth is the truth. So did you hear what he just said there?
Be on the stand having to explain why. If the prosecution had, well, Dr. Turvey, if this was such an important piece of evidence, why wasn't it tested? That would be
Did you-
a death blow.
So he's going to say to Ann, why would I want to be asked that question? Let's get the hair tested. Okay. Wouldn't that also buy you time? They always say how stuff takes so fucking long with labs and shit, right? At the end of the day, there's defense attorneys out there that are going to say, well, no, I want to use it to show that they already had their mind made up on who did this. And they weren't out there looking for the truth ever, not even from the very beginning. And it's like, okay, but when we found out about it, what did we do about it? Because I understand, and that's great, but that's like the 1900s way of defending a client. The 2026 way to defend a client needs to change. Okay. Especially if all you people believe that what Turtle Boy did with Alan Jackson and company was awesome, then you definitely want to be going over and saying, yeah, things need to change, right? But I do believe that there's a way to do it like legally, especially if the laws haven't caught up yet. There's a way to do it legally. And that's to be aggressive. Brian Colbert should be like, yeah, we want that tested. I know it's not my hair. I know it's not my hair. Hell yeah, I want that tested. Right?
That's right.
Did you ever get an explanation why the defense did not have it tested?
No.
Now, if he had to do his due diligence, the way that I'm making out this timeline, because the question would be is, when did you find out about the hair? Okay, in Ethan's hand. All right. And that whole walkthrough of when you went to look at the evidence, that had to have been before he produced, I'm guessing, his report in 2025 January. But I'm curious, maybe maybe it wasn't. So I'm interested in that. But if he's going to do his due diligence, he'd want to see that evidence. So that's why I'm saying that I believe it was between October and January of 2025. October 2024 to January of 2025. If you're going to do your due diligence. And he said that he did, because due diligence equals due process, which equals the constitutionality of keeping everything perfect for your client. Everyone's paused because it's just like, Ann Taylor, hair, Ethan's hands, we don't care.
Wow.
I have the same response, because there's a lot of people wonder, did she know about this? Did she get this? How much discovery did she have? But it's very clear that she knew this hair existed. She knew that it should have been tested.
Yes.
I could only imagine what you felt inside when you saw that at the evidence locker. I mean, if I was prosecution, yeah, I wouldn't want that tested either.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't, just so you know, I don't have those. I'm not a regular person. I don't have those kinds of feelings. I mean, I've been doing this a long time.
Thank you.
And I know I can kind of, how do I say it? I have sort of the Cassandra syndrome problem where I know what's coming. I know what's going to happen next. And either you believe me and take action, which is why you hired me in the first place, or you don't believe me and then you suffer the consequences.
What he means by that is, I know what's going to happen next. I'm going to be on the stand and they're going to ask me that question. So I'm sitting here telling you. And can you imagine? I'd be like, you're absolutely right. We need to get that tested. That happens immediately. Let's put in the motion. You're only as good as your team. Michael Jordan won dick until Scottie Pippen got there. Don't forget that. Everyone that wants to cream over Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't win dick until he had a team around him. Scottie Pippen.
Cassandra syndrome is where you're doomed to know the future but not be believed when you tell it. So when I see this, I don't sit there and go, oh my God, I don't have those kinds of responses. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let's make a note of that and circle back later on and we'll have a conversation. I don't get excited like a schoolgirl over stuff like that. I get excited like a little schoolgirl over my cats.
He's a cat.
We were the same way with family law. You get a little jaded, unfortunately.
You know, my basketball coach, she had cats, and she had a really good saying about that.
Doing it as long as we do.
Here's the thing. It's not about being jaded for me, because what I've learned is this. I've learned that my inept little fingers should not be in charge of anything. My inept little fingers can make things worse if I don't have all the information. So I'm not jaded. What I do get is disappointed. If I were jaded, I would stop doing this work. I think it's important. I think it's necessary. And I like to work with competent, ethical people. But what happens is I get disappointed by people who don't tell me the truth.
I get disappointed when people don't tell me the truth. Amen. Amen. That's why I'm so hot and bothered over what happened in the Karen Reed case. Yes, 34 months of truth. Thank you so much, Sherry. I don't know why I added an L there. Thank you so much. 34 months. Kay Schmidt turned 5 of you guys green aliens, as we love. Allie Tally said, hell with 5, man. We want 25 people to be green. So Kay Schmidt, and look at this thing talking to me. I wasn't talking to you. When I said sure, they thought I said Surrey. That's too funny. Again, Kay Schmidt, 5 smackaroos of memberships. And then Allie Tally was like, we're gonna include another 20 of you guys. Thank you so much, Allie Tally. Allie Tally making it so that our FOIAs stay intact. Murky, wondering though, if the hair wasn't tested, then how can they 100% exclude BK? Some will want to say it may be his still. Because they did he said that before I can rewind that. It was the lab that excluded it. The feds, from my understanding, but hang tight.
So I just want to
expect me to keep their secrets, which I'm not going to do.
Ooh.
Tell me the truth. To work with competent, ethical people. But what happens is I get disappointed by people who don't tell me the truth.
So I just want to
expect me to keep their secrets, which I'm not going to do.
And expect me to keep their secrets. People that don't tell me the truth expect me to keep their secrets. Yeah, the length and color had a lot to do with it, but they were able to take the macro characteristics of the hair. So, and that's a lot because that's easy. I just can't even believe it. I mean, you just got to be loving this. You got to be loving this if you believe, like, you want the truth here. If you can't handle it, get your ass out the kitchen.
I want to just kind of close the loop on that hair that was found in Ethan's hand. Sure. You said that it was excluded as co-burgers. Was it excluded as to any of the victims or any of the residents of the house as well?
It was never compared to anyone else in the house. In fact,
it was compared.
I'll give you another reality check here, which is that as we are all learning, we don't know all the people who were in the house that night.
And now this is going to bring up the next big flurry of conversations, which is Turvey comes with it and he says, we have no idea who the hell was in that house. Okay. We know the people that admitted to being in the house, but we have no idea who else was in that house. So basically the people that are admitting to being in that house that night at some point was Lakeland, Bethany, Dylan. Besides the people the victims.
We don't know. We don't have that list. We know who claimed to live there, or who were legitimately there, but we don't know who all the visitors were. We don't know where people were sleeping necessarily up until the moment of the attack.
Were there any other notable characteristics of the hair that was found?
Yeah.
What were they?
It was about that long. This was that long, and it was a blonde, reddish, sort of sandy brown. And I didn't look at the macroscopic detail, but the macroscopic detail that they were able to discern, other macroscopic detail, eliminated it from being Kohlberger.
Let me just tell you what he says. Eliminated being Kohlberger, and the person that actually looked at it said that it was really consistent with looking like it belonged to a female.
Kohlberger's hair is short and black, right? This is medium length and blondish sandy brown.
Blondish sandy brown.
All you need is 1 point of difference and you're done. So,
was there sufficient substance to that hair that DNA testing could have been done from it?
It's a fun question. I don't know because I didn't examine it. What you're asking, I think, Ron, is whether or not there were roots, right? Yeah. Roots can give you.
But guess what? I'm going to tell you about roots. I learned a lot about roots from Gabriel Vargas. And it's so interesting. You want to talk about roots? You want to talk about hair? Gabriel Vargas knows a lot about that. And so I inquired my ass off about that. So then in turn, I got to learn a lot about hair that's rootless and then hair that root. And he brings it up here.
One kind of DNA, but it's hair. Hair has mitochondrial DNA. You can test it for mitochondrial DNA, if you just have the shaft. Please do that all the time in other cases. So yeah, if you've even got a little fragment of hair, you can test it for DNA. not a confirmatory amount to identify a person or a source, but you can exclude people.
You could exclude people like male, female.
Sounds like
Wow.
a certain, potentially a female's hair.
Well, I'll tell you this. I will divulge this. When other people saw it, not me. When other people saw it, they thought it was a female's hair.
When other people saw it, not me, they thought it was a female's hair. Woo.
And I thought, okay, well, that's a good theory. It's also possibly a male's hair because men wear their hair different ways. I don't think like that, but let's not guess. That's what I always say. Hey, let's not guess.
Let's test it.
Let's test it and find out. There are people who will say, and I don't mean to.
How tall was or how long was Hunter Johnson's hair at the time?
Impugn lawyers, but there are many lawyers who are not as, we'll say, enlightened or motivated or competent as you. And they will say, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. That's the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. That's something from TV and movies. In reality,
I love it. When I heard this, I was like, oh my God, is he in my dreams? Because I completely agree with this.
or motivated or competent as you. And they will say, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. That's the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. That's something from TV and movies. In reality, if you are trying to find out what's happening in your case, you need to test the evidence that's relevant. You don't ever want to go into court not knowing the answer to those questions. You don't want surprises in court. You want to go in, like the value of me, for example, is you call me in and I'll tell you both the strengths and the weaknesses of your case. You're going to know from where the blade will fall. All right. And that is much more important than me going in and going, rah, 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 you're so great. Your guy's innocent. I don't do that. That's nonsense. That's not going to help you.
Waste of money.
It's not going to help you at all. I go in there and I say, here's what they got. Here's what it means. And here's what you need to do to figure out whether or not it's accurate.
Do you know where that hair?
So basically, there is no such thing as a defense attorney asking a question. If you're ever in that position as a defense attorney, then you didn't prepare. You understand? Then you didn't do your job preparing. And you didn't do your job preparing with the right people. Because that's why you confer with experts to say, because you put the foot on the other shoe and you say, okay, if you were hired by the prosecution, how would you go about this case? And now, like, you would, what does this mean? What does this mean? How, if they're going about it this way, what are they going to be trying to do and say? Like, come on. And then, okay, so what do we need to do? It's a war room. Do you have them?
Is still today? Is it still sitting in the evidence locker? Does Ann Taylor have access to get that hair tested should she want to at this point?
I don't know the answer to the logistical question is where it's at right now. Couldn't tell you. It would be practice it would be standard practice for the FBI to return the hair to the Moscow PD. They have the custody of that hair. The court can demand testing at any time if they wanted to, just like the court could demand an allocution in this case, which they didn't do, which is actually required to make sure you're not having a false confession. And I want to make that point really quick.
False confession. Yeah, because you need to make sure that this person's confessing to the act, to know that they're what they're saying is supposed to match evidence.
Quickly before I lose it, and that is that fully more than 25% of the cases that are worked by the Innocence Project involve innocent people confessing to crimes they didn't commit at the urgence of their attorney. Just remember that statistic. It's pretty important.
At the urgence of their attorney. Did you hear that last part? It's not just there's 25%. And this is Jennifer Drake. Wake up, honey. Jennifer Drake was asked this question in her deposition. Do you know anything about false confessions? Do you know that people make them? Do you know that there's an Innocence Project? Jen, come on now, girl.
Percent of the cases that are worked by the Innocence Project involve innocent people confessing to crimes they didn't commit at the urgence of their attorney. Just
their lawyers telling them to take this plea deal. And guess what you have to do? You're saying that you're guilty, right? And you're doing it but that's what your lawyer is telling you to do. So that you can get this plea deal, even though you didn't do it. Okay.
remember that statistic. It's pretty important.
25%.
I think it's important that you brought that up right now. in
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
There's other hair that was also found upstairs as well. And one of those clumps of hair supposedly had bloody roots as well. Is that true?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
But I mean, there have been, like I said, there have been tons of disclosures on this case subsequent to the plea. And once the plea occurred, my involvement was over.
Okay. Yeah, it actually was. I think it was in Chris's book that there was hair found both next to Maddie and next to Kaylee, which one of which might have had bloody roots, and which also was not consistent with any of the people in the house or with Brian Covert. So that's not something that you saw, though, right?
That's not something I examined. I was focused on sort of reconstructing the events of the evening, focusing on the sheet, which was clearly, sort of intentionally placed where it was, well after the crime occurred and blood had dried, and focusing on the staging elements, focusing on the
staging elements,
the timeline of events, and the different methods of killing that were involved, and the different weapons that were involved. So.
Now we're going to get to the knife sheath because I know everybody wants to talk about that. But really quick, with respect to the allocution, because I don't want to lose my train of thought.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I mean, I think we were all pretty shocked that other than him simply admitting guilt.
Only not consistent. It's entirely improper.
Is this consistent with other cases that you've worked on?
No, not only not consistent. It's entirely improper. It would be setting the stage for a great miscarriage of justice without having some confirmatory information to demonstrate because there's no actual direct evidence of his involvement at the crime or the crime scene.
You guys hear that? There's no evidence of him at the crime scene.
We demonstrate because there's no actual direct evidence of his involvement at the crime or the crime scene. We don't have that. So
direct evidence, okay? Because everything in this case is circumstantial, and that goes back to what we've always been saying here on this channel, which is how did you get to Brian Kober? Because that affidavit doesn't even get to him because they left out the most important part about the affidavit, which is the IGG. So how you're saying that you got to him is trying to make up this whole big thing about the 29th and making it seem like we got to him because of WSU and those fucking people that we know that they didn't do shit. Okay. And those people I'm talking about are Daniel Tanego and Curtis Whitman. In fact, what you now pretty much kind of put Curtis Whitman and Daniel Tanego in a box of is, well, shit. You actually were right around, one of you guys were right around his car. What were y'all doing? You checking out the fog lights, seeing if you had fog lights, realizing that he didn't have fog lights and saying, oh, fuck. What were you really doing? Really interesting. What, were you lifting some DNA off of the, what were you doing? Just curious. Because right after that is when the feds were given this profile to go build a family tree. Close up shop. I think it was like December 3rd, close up shop, and we're going to give it on over to the feds, but whatever.
What we need from any defendant in this case would be an explanation of what was done, how it was done, and that explanation should lead to corroborating evidence. And if it doesn't, then we have a problem. And the reason why it matters is because, again, that statistic I cited, which is that almost a third of cases involve clients or defendants that are pushed to take a plea that are actually innocent because they feel like they don't have an advocate or don't have any support, and but at the time they make they accept the plea, they are alone in the world and mentally deteriorated to the point of giving up. So
that's something we've talked about quite a bit. I don't even think we were aware of how many people take a guilty plea for those reasons you just described.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and that's why people like me have a job on that part in that part of the criminal justice realm and the appellate realm. Now, again, I worked a case one time in Colorado, for example. A guy completely confessed to killing somebody. All right, come to find out, that person was still alive. He got arrested. He got charged. The guy he confessed to killing was still alive. Right? If a person is going to take a plea, then they must allocute, and that allocution requires that they give details of the crime that nobody else has, so that they can be certain that they are confessing to a crime that they actually committed. Not like let's say in Latin America, for example, people will plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit for money and serve the time for wealthy people. That happens a lot.
Have you seen any?
So Latin America, they'll serve the time for wealthy people, right? And then they'll get paid off to serve the time. It happens in Latin America all the time.
Have you seen any cases that have been set aside after the fact or appealed or habeas corpus based on ineffective assistance of counsel for the lack of requirement of allocution?
No, because again, it would not be allowed to happen. No, nobody would allow that to happen. This happened. This case is replete with first times. With
This case is replete with first times. I'm telling you guys, it's like prom night here. Okay, a lot of first times. Okay, Idaho4 prom night. Okay, a lot of first times. Everything we talk about here is it's like that's what he's talking about, and I'm talking about prom night, first times.
outlandish and bizarre occurrences that don't occur in other places. And I think we're forgetting that even though Idaho is part of the United States isn't a country of all these places that get along with the same rules and laws. It's a series of little fiefdoms where people control the narratives, where people can decide when the law gets applied and where.
Yes. This is when he puts Idaho just on a map and just says, what y'all are doing in this state is fucking wild.
And it's not like we think. And I know because I work in all these, there are places I won't testify anymore. I won't testify in Mississippi, for example. I won't testify. I won't go there more cases. There are other places I won't go in the world because I know that the justice system is not reliable or ethical. When participating, it actually makes it look like you're being reliable and ethical when they're not. So there are places I will not lend my name to. But Idaho apparently is running its own little system there that's not abiding by sort of the criminal justice norms in death penalty cases that I can tell.
And you've worked on, it sounds like, quite a few cases where there was either DNA or some other evidence that led to someone being exonerated, exculpatory evidence, and they're out now.
Yeah, many. I worked on a case just a few months ago where my report. It's Kansas versus Julius Beasley. You can look it up. It was just 2 months ago, and I had prepared a report in that case a year ago, showing the crime scene was staged and the police had the wrong person. They arrested this homeless woman's boyfriend for stabbing her to death, and I was able to prove the crime scene was staged. The body was moved. She was killed somewhere else and dumped there, and all the elements were there for that. They didn't like that, but they also found out that other people had confessed to the crime, describing it exactly as I had in my report. And so my report, I wound up doing
Somebody needs to get Brent Turvey over to fucking Delphi right now. Okay? DB, that's your job. He's needed in the Richard Allen case. Richard Allen needs Brent Turvey because that is a stage crime scene. That is 1000% a stage crime scene. I believe that Richard Allen's going to get a new trial on ineffective assistance of counsel at the very least in his post-conviction. You know, whatever's going on here with his direct appeal, all that, great. I'm just saying that he, to me, but get him on the appellate docket for Richard Allen.
second report showing that the police had gone back and tried to scrape over everybody who had given information that was.
You know, if I was these attorneys that, you know, Baldwin, I'd be calling up Brent Turvey, flying out and meeting with him. Andy Baldwin knows his client was innocent.
Exculpatory and hide video evidence and all this good stuff. They were, you know, so the court, the DA actually, the new DA got assigned the case, read both of my new reports and was like, we can't take this to trial. He's not the guy, when they let him out. So I never think of it, but I don't think in those terms. I think in terms of what happened. All right. And a lot of the cases I work that are appellate cases, you know, we get people exonerated. You can go through my resume. You can see the cases I've worked where charges have been dismissed in death penalty cases or murder one cases. You can see the cases where people have been exonerated because of my testimony and that sort of thing. And you can also, you may not know, but I've also worked quite a bit for the police and for attorney general's offices in different parts of the world, assisting with prosecutions and assisting with keeping the right people in jail and keeping the wrong people from going to jail. So the world is full of ethical attorneys and ethical investigators and ethical prosecutors. And sometimes they do the right thing when the evidence is presented to them in the right way.
Suppose an appellate attorney came to you on behalf of Brian. We don't know if he's talked with anybody or if that's in the works or anything. But let's suppose that an appellate lawyer came and talked to you and wanted to see, or maybe with another expert, do you have any evidence, any thing that you can offer that you think would provide good ground for this being set aside in some manner? Would you have a lot to give them?
Well, yes, my report. My report and the report of every other guilt phase expert working on the case.
My report and every other guilt phase expert working on this case. The guilt phase is trial. How many experts? Okay. So when you want to listen to people want to quote these experts and only want to quote a portion of their shit and not everything that they say, do not believe that type of reporting. Okay. I'm telling you right now, these people that are covering the cases for their newspaper or they're giving you half. And I want to know why. And all of you people should want to know why. But he says it right here that all of the reports for everybody that's involved in the Bryan Kohberger case, nobody's getting up there saying that what you have here is what the narrative is of the prosecution.
So every guilt phase expert submitted a report that lines up with mine. Every one of them. So what I'm telling you is this is a bizarre occurrence that comes way out of left field with no change in the status of the evidence that appears to point every arrow away from Bryan Kohberger.
What do you think the families are thinking? Both Brian's family, both and all four of the families, and even the surviving witnesses family. I mean, you're hearing this. Like, what? And people just want to say he's lying. Wouldn't you be demanding to see every report of every? This is why this shit needs to be released, Hippler. Unseal the shit. Open up your fucking stupid website and dump this shit. This is enough. This is enough. In Moscow Police Department charging fucking outrageous amounts of money, okay? Because they need to sit there and go through stuff, and we have to take people's names out or take what they say out. Get the fuck out of here.
I would say this. I'll say it another way. Often in cases like this, I anticipate a future involvement being called at the ineffective assistance of counsel hearing for the attorneys involved.
Wait, what?
A future involvement being called, point every arrow away from Bryan Kohberger. I would say this. I'll say it another way. Often in cases like this, I anticipate a future involvement being called at the ineffective assistance of counsel.
So what he says there is that, because he's not talking about this case, but he's saying cases like this, he already prepares for ineffective assistance of counsel. Okay.
Counsel hearing for the attorneys involved. Because again, like we started out talking about this, can you imagine a situation where a forensic expert was involved directly in trying to conceal exculpatory evidence from the defendant? Can you imagine that? I'm not gonna live that life. That's not gonna work. I have to make sure that everyone understands it. And the other problem is there's nobody talking to Kohberger except for his family and his attorney, which is still Ann Taylor. Which again is, I think, a little problematic, but that's not my call.
That's a lot.
I think it's still a little. So Ann Taylor is still his attorney, and the only people that are talking to Kohberger are Ann Taylor and his attorney. And I want to know what type of relationship Ann Taylor has struck up with Bryan Kohberger. Okay. Because it's really, really interesting. Because I got to think, if the Kohberger family has watched this, okay, and they don't tell their son what they watched, or I don't know, call up Ann Taylor. I don't know, call up a lawyer, get a lawyer and talk to a lawyer about this. I mean, this is wild to me. But
Problematic. That's a lot. I really I really hope his family at some point sees that maybe they should be talking to someone else at some point.
I don't know how that'll happen. If she's controlling everything and access to him, which appears to be what's going on. I mean, we talked about this in the pre-interview, and that is that I don't know.
Remember, she's not a public defender anymore. She has her own law practice. So is she just defending Brian Kober now, like pro bono? Like, hey, Brian, I will stay with you. We will all stay with you the whole way through. We'll be the people that you can talk to go and serve your time. While you're serving your time, we're gonna just be your friends. What?
What Mr. Koberger knows or does not know. I don't know what he's been provided or not. I don't know how he's been provided that. I don't have any.
That's what I brought up the other day. I said, I want to see, we don't get the contents of Brian Koberger's. Like, I just want to see his call logs. Okay. I want to see his video visits, his in-person visits. Okay. We need to put in a request for that. We don't get I don't want the contents of anything. I want to see the logs. I want to see the logs of when even there was meetings happening.
Information about that. What I do know is, in general, when you're working especially on a death penalty case, you have to have a defendant who's actively involved and capable of participating in their defense because they are the decision maker. In this case, what do we got? The argument was, I didn't make this argument. This was a public argument made by Ann Taylor, so it's not a secret. I think she thinks everything she says is a secret. It's not. The reality is that the argument was he had mental health issues. He was not. He was mentally infirm in a lot of different ways and had different disabilities that he was dealing with. That was her presentation to the world. If you accept that as truth, then it's difficult to see how he could participate meaningfully in his defense, even if given all the information. What?
Just to clear up, because I think you kind of already said it, but it wouldn't be standard practice for you to ever communicate within the scope of your role as an expert with Brian, but you never had communication with Brian.
No, let's make this very clear. I get asked because a lot of times I get confused for a psychologist. A lot of times judges and attorneys, they confuse my role for that as a psychologist. I had a report today that the client wanted me to write about the psychological impact of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not a psychologist. Hire a psychologist for that. I don't talk to defendants unless I absolutely have to. I've done it maybe in 30 years. I've done it maybe 8 times, maybe. And that's only to go over facts and details at a crime scene to help me understand what happened when they were already stating there was like a self-defense case. And they're saying, this is what happened. Let me show you how. That makes sense.
That makes sense. And that's so true. You're not talking like it has nothing to do. Okay. So just think about that. Because it's all just off the evidence. Okay. And your client cannot possibly help me with a crime scene that they were not at. Okay. Think about it. Think about it. They're there to do a job. This is a job. This isn't, I want to meet your client. What? Like, no. It does not happen. That's normal. That's how it's supposed to be.
I don't go interview serial killers. I don't go interview mass murderers. I don't interview defendants. I don't collect, mugs and photographs of myself with people. I'm not a trophy collector. That's sick to me. My job is to keep myself objective to the physical evidence. And if I make connections with or communicate with or relationships with defendants, that can get in the way of my objectivity. That's number one. But number two, and this is why I like talking to you guys because you're legal minds. What happens if I go talk to a defendant in the lockup?
Privilege. There's no fucking privilege. There's no fucking privilege. That means anything that you say to me, okay, if you talk to me and you're a defendant, okay, if I was to get asked and called to the stand, like Turtle Boy, there's no privilege there. Turtle Boy talking with Karen Reed's attorneys, there's no privilege there. It means you can't invoke privilege during a trial. It means everything that you ever talked about is open and is fair game.
And he discloses everything to me, and then I go on the stand and testify. What happens?
It compromises your report and your role as an expert.
No privilege.
There's no privilege. There's no privilege. There you go. Sam gets the most points for not going.
And didn't I think when we talked at the pregame, didn't Ann want you to go talk to him by yourself? Like not even necessarily in her presence?
Yeah, I would assume it would be in her presence or with the investigator or something, but multiple times I was asked if I wanted to meet with him, and I explicitly said no, I don't do that.
That to me was the biggest bomb that I heard in this whole thing about Ann Taylor. What? Ann Taylor was like, do you want to meet with him? That is so not normal. So not normal. You don't understand. Okay? You don't understand. That is so not normal. That is so not normal. And so he's either making that up, okay, misunderstood Ann, but she would, and so maybe he misunderstood her, but he's over here is like, yeah,
that's not what I do. You need me to be completely objective and focused on the physical evidence, not on anything to do with what Mr. Koberger has to say.
Do you think that there was any intentional reason behind her wanting you to speak with Koberger?
Oh yeah, the whole thing, again, this is part of the misleading me. She wanted to convince me he was innocent.
Right there, I was like, wait a second, excuse me? Wait, what? You guys, this is mind-blowing. Because he's saying the quiet part out loud. Because we've all sat here and said, yes, Ann Taylor is saying things to this court that are saying things that he is innocent. Not only does Brian Koberger maintain his innocence, okay, but we believe in his innocence. And that's why when Dr. Turvey says, here are these 3 things I had questions of, which was, when did the deal start? How did you get Brian Koberger to agree to this? Because Brian Koberger, and he's going to get to the point of talking about legally guilty and factually guilty. Legally innocent, factually innocent. And he does a great way of explaining it so that everybody can understand. When I say, hey, Brian Koberger said that he was guilty, okay? Until Brian Koberger wants to say something else, but Brian Koberger has nothing to do with, like, that's him, right? He's saying that he did it. He's saying that he did it. What does that have to do with the evidence? What does it have to do with the evidence of if Dan Moore is saying he didn't do it? What does that have to do with Karen Reed saying she didn't do it? None of it fucking matters, right? But to the world, hey, he fucking said he did it. He killed people. And you know what I was saying is, believe him until he wants to say something else. But that's not going to stop what we're doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have talked about the case anymore. We're going to go get the evidence. We're going to just go get our FOIAs and work the case how we've always worked the case. If that somehow did not resonate that way, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, but yep, if Brian Koberger said he did it, believe him until he says he doesn't. But again, that has absolutely nothing to do with what we've ever done on this channel and how we go about the case. And we're going to go get the FOIA request. We're going to go get the evidence. We're going to lay it all out. Because right here, Brent Turvey, when did the deal start? How did Brian ever agree to this? And the involvement of Hitler, and he said he got 3 different answers to that. Right? Well,
and I said to her, I don't.
Intentional reason behind her wanting you to speak with Koberger?
Oh yeah, the whole thing, again, this is part of the misleading me. She wanted to convince me he was innocent. And I said to her, I don't care.
Exactly. I don't care if he's innocent or guilty. I don't care what he has to say. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I know that might be hard for people to accept that, but that's the truth.
When I'm on the stand, and this is not, again, it's not a secret. I will tell this to any client who hires me. If you put me on the stand and ask me, what do you think of so-and-so? I will say the same thing. I don't care. I don't care about Brian Kohlberger. I don't care about any of the other people involved. I don't care about anybody. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to get a date. I'm not here to get political clout. I am here to represent the physical evidence in the trial. I am here to be an objective voice for the physical evidence that exists and does not exist. That's what I.
What a concept. What a concept. And so the question we should ask ourselves is, why did Ann Taylor give a flying fuck? Because she's supposed to just, I mean, why is Ann Taylor wanting people to get emotionally involved in cases? What the fuck's wrong with her? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Meeting Brian Kohlberger doesn't change anything. What, is he gonna go run a mile for me? You're gonna show me how he can't, like, what? I just, meeting Brian Kohlberger does not change anything.
That's the value that I bring. If I can't do that, then I have no real value, is my opinion.
And we'll get into all your scientific based conclusions at the end, but
Guys, that's why I got so much shit back in 2018 with the case of Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. Okay. I said, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. What Chris says, don't care. I care about the evidence. And what the evidence showed me is that Chris had his devices on him all morning, both his work cell phone and his personal cell phone. And during the time frame of when the children were put in the oil tanks, Chris Watts's data did not show any elevation in, there was no, there were steps because he was working, but there was no stairs. Do you have any idea how high those tanks were? Going up just once would have registered 2 flights. Going up and putting the kids in individually would have registered 4. No flights of stairs were registered, and also in the morning. Sit and spin on that.
I know there's so many comments, so many people want to know.
Good.
Can we just give them a little taste of what you believe the evidence has shown with respect to him being guilty?
Well, first of all, he is guilty legally. Guilt is a legal posture. He stated that.
God, I loved this part. God, I love this part. You want to know why I love this part so much? Thank you so much, Allie Tally. Allie Tally. That FOIA be burning. It's important. Let's get to work. And we're fucking doing, man. They could say we're doing God's work. We're doing human work here. And I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, back over here. So listen to how he says this.
He is guilty legally. Guilt is a legal posture. He stated that he was guilty in court, and the court.
Oh my God, he stated he was guilty in court. Now listen, this is the best way to break it down.
Basically said, "Yep, you're guilty, and here's your sentence." Okay, so from a legal posture, he's legally guilty. Here's the problem, and this is the conflation of things. You can be legally guilty and factually innocent. Happens.
You can be legally guilty and factually innocent, just like you can be legally innocent and factually guilty. Jennifer Drake comes to mind.
All the time. You can be factually guilty and legally innocent. Happens all the time. Okay, so the legal posture is.
So is that a better way? Did he just explain this in a way? Okay. It wasn't a watch. Mods, for the rest of the time being, Just anything that has to do with the Watts case, just delete out. It's a distraction. Now, did we all hear that? This is the best breakdown that you will ever hear. And it's saying it in like literally 2 sentences.
And the court basically said, yep, you're guilty, and here's your sentence. Okay. So from a legal posture, he's legally guilty. Here's the problem, and this is the conflation of things. You can be legally guilty and factually innocent. Happens all the time. You can be factually guilty and legally innocent. Happens all the time. Okay. So the legal posture is you're guilty. Okay. That legal posture can change. It is not, how do I put this? The law can be negotiated, but science cannot. Okay.
Sheldon Jeter Jr. is legally guilty and factually innocent.
The law is negotiated. Well, I'll say it the same way I said this in West Memphis.
West Memphis 3. Brian Colbert can be legally guilty right now, but factually innocent. And that's what he's saying. You can pervert whatever the fuck you want, but you will not. Science cannot be messed with. And I believe that holds true in the Richard Allen case. I believe that Richard Allen is factually innocent. Same thing.
In the day, back in the long time ago, when I was young and had no beard and was much fatter. There's no physical evidence that suggests that Brian Colbert is responsible for this crime.
There is no physical evidence that suggests that Brian Colbert is guilty of this crime. That's a fact. There is no physical evidence. If we can explain Karen Reed's taillight being shattered and spread all over 34 Fairview, it's her taillight. But if we can explain that to a jury that found her innocent, how could a sheath with touch DNA not be explained with no nexus to the victims? Karen Reed was there. Karen Reed dropped him off. When I try to sit here and tell you guys that there is more evidence, physical evidence against Karen Reed than there will ever be against Brian Colbert, that is a fact. Karen Reed was found innocent. I say the back. Karen Reed was found not guilty. Words matter. Karen Reed was found not guilty. Why? Because she's a girl? If Karen Reed would have been a boy? I'm just like, because what their claim is that it was what? It was planted.
That's all you got. That's all I can say. There's no physical evidence which suggests Brian Colbert is responsible for this crime. And anybody who says differently is twisting themselves into a pretzel with unconfirmed circumstantial theories they've created in their head. And by the way, that's why the prosecution was very clearly interested in making a deal.
Yeah. Doesn't explain why the defense made the deal.
Right there. You gotta give John an A+ here again. But what he just said there, this is why the prosecution wanted to make this plea deal. Because of the evidence. And you know what's disgusting? Is that this whole entire time, all we were fucking told is how the evidence is so horrible for Brian Kohlberger. That's just not the truth. That's just not the truth.
Circumstantial theory evidence that suggests that Brian Kohlberger is responsible for this crime. That's all you got. That's all I can say. There's no physical evidence which suggests Brian Kohlberger is responsible for this crime. And anybody who says differently is twisting themselves into a pretzel with unconfirmed circumstantial theories they've created in their head.
So anybody that wants to call you a pro-burger out there, call him a fucking pretzel. You heard? Pretzel. Go be a pretzel. This case demanded a trial. This case demanded transparency. This case demanded for these officers to have to own their fucking work. Okay, that's what this case, those victims were owed that. Those families were owed that. And the only people that took that away from the victims is Bill Thompson and Ann Taylor and the fucking judge.
And by the way, that's why the prosecution was very clearly interested in making a deal.
The prosecution was very clearly what? Adamant of making this plea deal happen. So much so that they lied to the families to get it to happen, right? And that's who you're going to back, and that's what you're going to. Come on, man.
Yeah. Doesn't explain why the defense made the deal.
See, another one of John's. Gotta shake it for John. Doesn't explain why the defense made the deal. What do you think, Brent?
Nope. Doesn't matter.
All right, let's get into the knife sheath. Let's get into that. Sam, you want to start us off with that section?
It doesn't explains why the prosecution wanted a plea deal, right? But it doesn't explain why you would ever go the route of doing a plea deal in this case, when basically what Brent Turvey is telling you is that you have it all. You have them bust up at everything that they're going to be talking about. Did I just say John? I'll tell you why I said John.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just want to hear from you, Dr. Turvey. What happened? How did you first go, there's an issue with the sheath? Because that's one of the biggest pieces of quote unquote evidence that everyone's talking about, that the prosecution has always pointed at Brian about.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's quite a few problems. And the first one is its placement. It is very clearly underneath one of the victim's thighs, sticking out, covered by a comforter, and very evident when you look at it in the photographs. It's hard to miss. But the problem is the knife sheath itself is clean, for lack of a better word. It's not being used. So that's the first thing. There's no usage. It's not like somebody wore it on their belt, and not like somebody scratched it or pulled things in and out, pulled the knife in and out of it. It's pristine, other than a couple little areas of flecks of blood. So that's the first problem. One is placement, the location. You can't drop it and find it in that spot. And you can't, there's no evidence of usage of the sheath, and there's no evidence of any massive bloody transfer, which would be expected. If somebody slid that under there, that person would have the bloody hands, we assume, and we infer that it would have bloody hands, and there would be blood on it. There's no blood like that on it. No transfer from hands, and only a little bit of spatter. But it's on top of a sheet that is covered with a star field of blood spatter, okay? And that blood spatter is not, how do I put it? And this is, again, it's not secret. This has all been revealed. This has all been revealed over and over again. It's just a question of putting it together. The sheath itself has no transfer from that blood on the sheet to the top of the sheath as it slid into that position. And none of those transfers are smeared, which means it happened after the blood dried.
Boom! After the blood dried. Okay, I'm going to slow him down, and I'm going to slow this down so we can all let him explain this one more time about the things you would expect to see with this sheath. Okay, it's in pristine condition. It's always bothered a lot of people. Always, I mean, you know how many emails I got about that? Okay, it's like it was never used. Okay. So we back up.
Not transfer from hands, massive. It's very evident when you look at it in the photographs. It's hard to miss.
At Brian about.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's quite a few problems. And the first one is its placement. It is very clear.
Okay, so make your list. Number 1, placement. Again, there's nothing new here because he talks about it in his report. Placement.
Clearly underneath one of the victim's thighs, sticking out, covered by a comforter, and very evident when you look at it in the photographs. It's hard to miss.
So think about this. If you're in a struggle, okay, and at some point when it gets there, but if there was blood already on it with a little bit of spatter, then it would have been like smudges from that spatter. And he's saying that it doesn't have that. Number 1. So the placement was underneath they're saying portion of Meddy's thigh leg area.
Yes. But the problem is the knife sheath itself is clean, for lack of a better word. It's not being used. So that's the first thing. There's no usage. It's not like somebody wore it on their belt, and not like somebody scratched it or pulled things in and out, or pulled a knife in and out of it. It's pristine, other than a couple little areas of flecks of blood. So that's the first problem. One is placement.
So somebody wasn't utilizing it to the point of like even just taking the knife out, putting the knife back in, you know, at different points in times when you have ever had that knife. You know, you get it mailed to you through Amazon, and then you're just like, okay, I'm going to just leave it in this package because I know what it is. Never going to use it. I'm going to wait for the day that I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to take it out.
Location, you can't drop it and find it in that spot, and you can't. There's no evidence of usage of the sheath, and there's no evidence of any massive bloody transfer, which would be expected. If somebody slid that under there, that person would have the bloody hands. We assume, and we infer that it would have bloody hands, and there would be blood on it. There's no blood like that on it. No transfer from hands, and only a little bit of spatter. But it's on top of a sheet that is covered with a star field of blood spatter. Okay, and that blood spatter is not. How do I put it? And this is, again, it's nuts.
So the good follow-up would have been like, if once they would have removed, this is why they don't have a picture of this, is to remove the sheath from where it was, right? It shouldn't there be a big blank spot there where the sheath was, and showing that the missing spatter, right, is consistent with being absent because the sheath was there when certain spatter happened. Right? It should be the absence of in that area should be like no, it almost would like have this outline. But if it was on the floor originally, right? And then it was placed there after the fact, right?
Secret. This has all been revealed. This has all been revealed over and over again. It's just a question of putting it together. The sheath itself has no transfer from that blood on the sheet to the top of the sheath as it slid into that position, and none of those transfers are smeared.
So when he's talking about sliding into that position, is it like I would be like, okay, do you mean like somebody physically taking their hand, and why would you be sliding it with a hand? Okay, it's more like sliding into position because of a struggle after it comes off, and then somehow it slides there. But I would ask him the question about the whole, well, why would it would have never been placed there by anybody that was the killer, because the killer would have been like, oh my God, I need this, right? Like, I wouldn't be placing it if I'm the killer. That's what he's talking about. Like, the killer didn't place it because the hands of the killers are all going to be bloody, and there's no blood like that on there. Okay. And so then he's saying, if it was placed there, though, by someone without bloody hands, wearing gloves, in the nighttime of the next day, because it was truly found on the floor, but then they put it up there.
Which means it happened after the blood dried. That's the first set of problems we got. The second thing is,
he's saying that it's very compelling to explain this to a jury that this sheath was put there in its final resting spot that you're seeing in this photograph after the blood was already dried. And that would probably be the most compelling in my eyes. And then the second most compelling thing is that none of the first responders or anybody, I mean, we have all this body worn camera, and all these officers are talking back and forth to each other, and not a single one of them talks about the sheath.
it was originally observed to be on the floor by Taylor at the crime scene.
Are you talking about Taylor?
Problems we got. The second thing is, it was originally observed to be on the floor by Taylor at the crime scene. All right, much later on. And then finally, of course, after I'd written my report, we had done a very good job was done of going through some chain of custodies, and I was given this chain of custody. Said, "Turvey, what do you think?" because we think it's a problem, but maybe you have a different opinion because you're a forensic scientist and we're not. What do you think? And I'm like, the chain of custody's been falsified. People go to jail for that. They get put on leave, investigated, fired, and then criminally investigated and go to jail for that. So
Not in Idaho. Pretty
They call it, they think that it was a typo. I'm like, it wasn't a typo. First of all, you're writing something out. So like it's written out and they messed it up by when they wrote like, on the floor or whatever, they meant to put like floor 3. Well, guess what they do? Guess what all of them get to do? You get to like take your written notes and go through them. And if there's something there that you put a line through, you change it, and then you initial it with your date. Okay. And so they would have had the opportunity to do that. Just like they did do it, but they didn't do it with that. Like whoever was going through that didn't change that. Didn't make it, even if they thought that, oh, this could be read and like, let's reword this. Okay. They didn't do that. But they did it throughout all of their notes. Like that's the bench notes. That's what you're supposed to do. You're allowed to do. Okay. They never corrected it. And then they don't write up a report for 3 weeks until December 6th when Talbot writes up, and when I say writes up, types up his report. And that, in my opinion, is already after they have the name Brian Kober. Okay. Sorry. December 6th, you had and found his car on the 25th of November, if not the 24th, by Andre St. Love over there in Pullman. And it was the 8th documented license plate. And that's still when they're like, when they were told that it could be 6 to 7 different vehicles. And November 19th, there's emails going back and forth, and they have a list, and a fucking Elantra is not even on it. You guys, on November 19th, there is an email going back and forth with people, WSU people, and Elantra is not even on that list. November 19th.
Apparently it's no big deal.
their own rules.
Well, anytime you have an attorney or a police officer telling you that chain of custody is no big deal, that to me is a red flag that suggests you should look at every one of their cases to see whether or not they've been falsified in chain of custody. Because a lot of agencies put up with it. A lot of agencies will just ignore when a chain of custody has been falsified.
Yeah, and of course, the law enforcement there said there was no problem with the chain of custody. But what I think I've seen as an explanation given was, yes, there's the handwritten chain of custody, which may have been done after the fact or put on there, but there's also these barcodes. Was there an electronically kept chain of custody?
That's BS. I'm so ignorant. I can't even respond.
Oh my God, it's so bad. It really, whoever is saying that has no idea what a chain of custody is and what the barcodes are for. The barcodes are for locating the item on the shelf. It has nothing to do with the chain of custody.
This is what I think would be a great show, okay? Is you want to have a debate. Okay, so it's like name somebody and name another person that can debate these issues. Because everybody's talking about like, yeah, we don't do it like that anymore. You guys, I told you, I will show you this stuff in a 2020 case that was just 2 years before this case. And I'll show you how Idaho was doing it. The hell yeah, they were writing stuff down, handwritten and doing all that shit. So when they want to talk about that, that's not how we've been doing it for years. I have the case. I have it unredacted. Idaho State Police is exactly how you do things. Okay. When they were lying and saying that they found the gun that killed Drake, and then it was Dan Moore's son's gun, that they were trying to tell people that. It was absolutely lies. They knew that that wasn't the gun. They knew that the gun that Dan Moore brought in that day, all concussed, was his wife's gun that she's never even freaking used. Like, they knew all this shit. They lie. They are so full of shit. So full of shit. Sherry, you like that? Did you see your you have a little toy next to your little name there. Oh, look at that. La 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 bumba. Thank you so much for the 999. Welcome. Is Is this Judy Lopez? Welcome to Memberland. Memberland. We're never going back. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
The chain of custody is about who's handled the evidence, who's opened it and closed it, who's received it, who's transported it, so that you can determine whether or not the evidence has been tampered with or altered inappropriately, and therefore who's responsible. If you go through and have one person just create one for everybody, that's not everybody. It's like the same as signing an affidavit. It's a sworn document saying, I am receiving this. I opened it, I examined it, and there's going to be a report, and then I'm giving it back. And then somebody else comes and checks it out. It's a bit, so the idea of the barcode thing, that's somebody who is, anybody who's talking about the barcodes as being a chain of custody, they are a functional illiterate when it comes to.
He calls them a functional illiterate. Dude, you guys, this is just the greatest 2 hours and 25 minutes I think that we've had in a while. They're just a functioning illiterate.
To forensic science and evidence custody of evidence. Functional illiterate.
That's even some attorneys. I was watching a podcast, I think last night, and I think they were PI attorneys, but one was actually a DA for a long time, and now he's a criminal defense, and he was completely trying to downplay the chain of custody and how it really wasn't that big deal. And even if it was, there was a broken chain of custody, it very likely would not have even impacted the outcome. But Sam and I were
not with him as an attorney, it wouldn't have.
For sure. And what if it would have?
So everybody should take note of who that guy was and never hire him for anything.
Terrible. I know, that's right. Terrible.
There's a lot of ignorance on this issue, but any basic textbook on forensic science explains this very clearly. And what you want to do is have a forensic scientist explain it slowly, like they're talking to a fifth grader when they explain this to attorneys, prosecution or defense, or police officers, because this kind of stuff puts officers in jail when they fabricate what's called falsification of, what do we call it? We call tampering with evidence, falsification of public documents, false reporting, and forgery.
Do you think of any legitimate circumstance where the chain of custody, as it appeared in this, written by one person, same handwriting, would be legitimate, or would be there would be a good explanation?
You can't vouch for somebody else. Let's do it this way. Let's say it this way. We're going to do a drug test of me, and we're going to take those drug tests and put it into a bag, and then I'm going to hand it to I'll hand it to one of you, and you'll receive it. Then you'll hand it to somebody else, and you'll receive it. And you'll hand it to somebody else, and they'll receive it. And then it'll be at the lab and be tested. Okay? But then we forgot to do it. So let's just have me go and do it all, do the whole chain of custody and sign your names on everything. And then we're going to go into court and say this is a legitimate chain of custody for all the people that examined it, and it vouches for everyone. Is that legitimate?
No, it's not legitimate. That is absolutely crazy. Okay. You want to be able to pinpoint exactly what you said. Who the hell? This is off, right? This is wild, right? Hey, look at the picture that they took at the lab, but look at how the picture was at the crime scene, right? Let's just say that. I said they were different. Well, who did it? This is no different than the Karen Reed case and the John O'Keefe's clothes. What are the chain of custody on John O'Keefe's clothes? Okay. Like what? What? It's a big deal. You want to know who handled it. There's a reason for that you have it. If it's not a big deal, then why is there a chain of custody form?
Would you trust that?
No.
Exactly.
You're recreating. You're trying to recreate history.
Well, remember, I actually, in response to sort of Ann Taylor's bizarre claims, I posted a couple of articles related to this very issue where law enforcement officers had been fired for falsifying chain of custody. But there was a bigger one. There was I can't remember if it was Austin, Texas, or Dallas-Fort Worth, but one of the Texas Department of Public Safety crime labs had a huge DNA scandal, a series of them between 2000.
I'm so glad that you actually wrote this, Moto Man. We're going to talk about it. If this episode didn't vindicate all of y'all, then you don't know what that word means. This episode vindicates anybody who's been screaming what we've been screaming. I've felt vindicated before this, but this is just a fucking cherry on top. Cherry on top. Cherry on top.
In 2008, that got their DNA lab shut down. And one of the things they did was they brought in a new admin, and her job was to go through and make sure all the evidence lined up and was secure and safe and where it was supposed to be, right? The barcodes. Can we find it? Can we find it in the evidence custody, the evidence locker? Well, she didn't have chain of custody for a bunch of the items of DNA. So she just went around and fabricated them and asked people about them. She got fired for that. She got fired when that came out, all right? Because it is an illegitimate, unethical, incompetent, and fraudulent scientific process. You're trying to bolster the credibility and reliability of a piece of evidence by fabricating all the names and signing it yourself. And when you do that, put your job at risk.
Would the prosecution have been able to rehabilitate that by bringing in all the people whose names have allegedly appeared on that?
That's the argument, right? That I think is their posture. That well, we're just bringing people and have them testify about, that they actually did do it. That would work potentially, except one, I think the defense would have a huge problem with that because you really can't know whether or not these people are telling the truth well after the fact. But two, not every examination that was known to be done on that sheet was a part of the chain of custody. It was missing. It was missing some of the
Thank you. It was missing. So like
examinations.
it was missing examinations. The chain of custody on that form, it ends and does not include the fact that they retested stuff on 12/5. Where's that shit? He's like, you guys know when you play tic-tac-toe and you can win either way? Okay, these are tic-tac-toe moments. This is like, I got you both ways. Whatever it is that you want to try to say, well, we got you like this. And then if you want to claim it that way, then I got you like this. That's when you have somebody, in my terminology, I say, I toe tagged you. Like, let's go. I call it a toe tag because, did you put the speed up, Lana? Yes, I did. It's like 1.25, something like that. I go up and down, up and down. I announced at the beginning. No, Brent Turvey is just eating razor blades and meth over there.
I think the defense would have a huge problem with that because you really can't know whether or not these people are telling the truth well after the fact. But two, not every examination that was known to be done on that sheet was a part of the chain of custody.
That's the bomb. Like mine, just like what?
It was missing. It was missing some of the examinations.
Remember when they did another examination?
Wow.
And you know what? Also, like, I cannot believe that Dollinger's the captain. I found so much shit that Dollinger, like, I'm saying that it is physically impossible for Dollinger to do stuff because I broke down all the times. I said he would have had to leave Moscow Police Department at this time to do this, and then to be able to get back to write this email. And so, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get that day. I think it was the 20th. I'm going to go get that, and I'm going to do a FOIA on that. I want to FOIA his time card back then. It's just.
In Chris's book, he indicates that there was a period of time it was missing too, which is even more concerning.
Yeah. So even if the sheath was not excluded by Judge Hippler, which, who knows what he was going to do based on what he'd done previously, but there still would have been a huge reasonable doubt there for the jury on whether the sheath had been tampered with or could have been tampered with.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ron, I think that's a good point because I know that everyone brings up the chain of custody and some people are saying it's not an issue, but when you're looking at the admissibility of potential evidence at trial, it certainly is an issue. What a judge would do with it may be a different thing, whether you'd agree with that or not, but it's still a very important issue because if it is excluded, then you can't even talk about that at all. It's out.
Or the little piece of DNA in the class. Here's the point. The people who are saying that are people who already decided what they want to be true or what not to be true. Well, let's ask ourselves a basic question. It's like saying physical evidence isn't important or necessary.
I fucking love, dude. You guys know when I give you these analogies, that's why I love him, man. It's like saying that, hey, you want to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? But you don't get any peanut butter. Well, you're not eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, then are you? You're eating a fucking jelly sandwich, aren't you? No, I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without the peanut butter. Like, justifiers. I'm like, and that's why we don't hang out. That's why we don't vibe. Just people that just want to change the rules. As Bella says, Lana, you can't just go around moving the goalposts. Okay. Well, in Idaho, you can do whatever the fuck you want, and the goalposts change daily.
If that's true, then why do we have crime labs? Why do we bother to train people to collect evidence? Why do we bother to train people to test evidence? Why do we have a whole realm of the criminal justice system dedicated to?
Why do we have policies? Goes back to the whole IgG problem. Why do you guys want to do IgG, but nobody wants to follow any policies?
forensic science and the interpretation of forensic evidence. Why is that important? And more importantly, why is the chain of custody right on the outside of the bag? Why is it right there for everyone to see? And why are we bothering to do the signatures? Why does that matter? Because it's super important for reliability and for admissibility. It's super important. And pretending it's not when you do that, it kind of shows your cards a little bit. Shows your cards. Shows who you really are as a criminal justice professional, or even as a.
Tell me again how this would have okay, I think that Cy Ray would have done amazing on the stand. Brent Turvey on the stand. Okay. Josiah Roloff, I think, would have been good. The juries like to see, when they're weighing up their, hey, is this guy, what, who is he, blah, blah. Okay, now he's going to start talking. But either Cy Ray's full of shit too, okay, and is a great bullshitter, right? And this guy's just a great bullshitter too. But I started thinking about last night. I'm like, we watch so many trials where these experts are so fucking boring. This guy was not going to be boring on the stand. Cy Ray is not going to bore you on the stand. And that is so important, because your jury, you got to keep them, hey, this is really important shit here. And so I'm just like, who are they going up against? Mowry? Gilbertson? Nick Balance? Are you kidding me? Rob Hill? Immel? Ed Jacobson? Leslie Lehman? Mike Van Leuven? Gary Tollison? Danny Vargas? Are you? It's like fucking the 1992 Dream Team, United States Dream Team. Christian Laettner coming on that team, selling a bunch of jerseys. Against who? Fucking, I don't even know. This is nuts to me. Ann Taylor, why did you spend all of Idaho's money? All of these fucking taxpayers' money? Who goes and drafts the fucking dream team to bench them all and to bow down to fucking, I don't know, Jason Kidd? Crazy shit.
Commentator that you've already decided and you don't want to hear it.
And this chain of custody issue with the chief, this was something that you were bringing to Ann Taylor.
I think Ann Taylor is scared of this case, and the only thing I can think of that makes any sense is that she wanted the case, and then something fucking happened, man. And then you got to start asking yourself, if the threats started coming, what the hell happened here? And it's Idaho, so trust me, I do not doubt it for a second. Okay? These defense attorneys in Idaho, I mean, Jill Bolton knows Dan Moore is innocent as fuck. Innocent as fuck. But she had no problem leaving his ass at the fucking 11th hour. And not telling him, well, what's the game plan here? What were you doing all this time, taking almost $1 million of my money? What's my trial strategy here? Can you tell it to my new attorneys here?
Attention right about the time the plea came down, right?
Yeah. Well, it was brought to my attention, and then it was asked to me as a question, and I answered the question, and then I was given the assignment of going and looking at all the change of custody for all the other important.
And what point was that, though, when it was brought to your attention, Dr. Turvey? At what point, roughly, was that at?
Well, I don't know when everybody else knew, but it was a question that arose at some point. I couldn't tell you when, but it was brought to my attention about a week prior. And then I was given the task of running down change of custody on other items. And again,
So
that's not a secret.
I'm assuming you shared your conclusions based on your research. I'm assuming you shared those with Ms. Taylor.
For sure.
And you didn't even really have a chance to finish those tasks by the time he pled guilty, right?
Well, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I completed a lot. Let's put it this way: I completed a lot of tasks.
When people are good, they're good. You know, I just don't know how else to say it, but like, who goes out and gets the top? I don't even know how. Who goes out and blows the Yankee type money to put a team together to go fucking win a World Series and then benches $425 million worth of fucking salaries to play these fucking peons in fucking AAA? Nobody.
Okay. What were there other items of evidence that there were chain?
You have the best people that are ready to go take out a trial and talk about this case the way that it should be talked about, and you fucking take your cards and you take your what are you doing? Why? There has to be some why? And people just want to say, oh, because Brian just wanted to at the end. Based off of what did you say to this man? And again, it goes back to the three things that Brent Turvey said is, when did the deal start? How in the world did Brian Kober agree to this shit? How did you get him to agree to this stuff? And when was the involvement in Hitler and what was his involvement? And he got 3 different answers on 3 different times about that. And that's truly interesting.
Custody issues that you did find.
I think that's a question that needs to be answered later. I can only discuss what's publicly disclosed.
All right, I already got you penciled in for part 2, Dr. Turvey. That's
There's got to be an IAC hearing, right?
There has
No.
to be.
There's not any chance of that.
Just
Representing Brian Koberger, no, there doesn't have to be at all. As long as Anteo is the attorney representing Brian Koberger, there's not any chance of that.
justice requires it, I think.
Well, I would agree.
So basically, he's saying if Ann Taylor continues to be Brian Koberger's attorney, nothing is going to happen in this case.
I will just say this: science and justice both require a level of transparency that we're not experiencing in this case.
Can I ask this?
You can ask whatever you want.
Was any DNA found on that night sheet ever directly tied to Brian Koberger?
Not that I'm aware of.
And then why are we seeing that all over the place that people are saying that Brian Koberger's DNA was found on the
Let me
sheet?
do this right now. And you guys are smart people. I like you guys. You're smart. So how many things do you see daily being discussed about this case that have no basis in reality?
Quite a lot.
Tons.
Yeah.
So much bullshit.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
So I know in the book, actually initially the first crime lab that the sheet was sent to, they returned it saying there's no chain of custody, right?
In Texas, no, that was you're confusing two different events. Right?
Yeah.
One is the Idaho State Police Crime Lab. They are the ones who originally said, "Hey, we got the sheath now. I need a chain of custody for him for this because there's not one on it." So they asked for one, and a few days later, Moscow police sent them one that they had fabricated. All right. Then there's the other issue of the testing of the DNA on the sheath, which is about on the clasp, which was done at the lab in Texas, I think, the initial testing. But these are two separate issues.
And
The
what
lab in
was,
Texas, Othram.
Sorry, what?
Was that Othram Labs? The lab in
believe-
Texas?
I can't recall independently. The DNA was not my area of expertise. The DNA interpretation is not my area of expertise. What I know is that at the Frank's hearing, pretty much everyone agreed that the DNA that they found was an investigative lead and not sufficient to make an identification.
I know that in the book, in Whitcomb's book, Chris's book, he indicated that the FBI essentially gave Brian Koberger's name to local law enforcement as a tip, so that it's as strong as they can get. Do you have any information about that, or did he get that from others?
That's something you'd have to ask the FBI about. I don't. I mean, I think that answers the question. That everybody who testified at the Frank's hearing did not perceive this as a nail in the coffin. They perceived it as an investigative lead that should be followed up on.
Well, also they were told that wasn't coming from the sheath. That was a specific question. You guys remember all the time I was spending on going over, like I was like, hey, you guys, I pulled out the old, what do you call it? The transcripts. Okay. And here is what the questions were that Ann Taylor was asking. And here is what Payne was saying. Okay. And what she needed to just focus on the whole time was, you didn't have anything until IGG was done, right or wrong? What made you ever start looking at Brian Koberger? Where did that name come from? And you did not disclose that if that's how this all started, so what is all this other shit in here for? If you're saying that you did not know about what? You're just running queries. You did not know about the WSU queries with Tenego and anybody else. Okay, this all goes back to when you talk about getting this Franks hearing. One was granted on the IGG stuff, and I told you it was all really, really, it was horribly done because it was so confusing because you were granted a full Franks for the IGG stuff. But what didn't make any sense though is, well, if we're already to that point, that means that we have a good enough showing to show that they lied about never, because that's how you get the whole even having a Franks hearing. You usually have a motion and you're heard on your oral arguments, and it's about a proffer. It's about a showing of that you should be getting a Franks hearing. Okay. And that was the problem that I saw, is that Ann Taylor like wasn't treating it as like, okay, it's a Franks hearing. Why are you only calling Payne to the stand? Why wouldn't it be the whole entire command team who it was a joint writing of this probable cause? Okay, who is that? And you would know, okay, what Payne wrote one, Mowry wrote one, and Payne, Mowry, Blaker. Nick Balance was used in it. Hill, Immel, Ed Jacobson. Why aren't you calling all these people to the stand to get to the bottom of their role? Because guess what? There are no reports with these people and what their roles were. And so how did you contribute?
But then, cameras start rolling and people get in front of the camera and a microphone gets stuck in their face and they don't want to look like a slapped ass. So they start saying stuff.
A slapped ass. But fall out of my chair with that one.
I'm more than happy to look like a slapped ass, by the way.
Well, I can tell you, Dr. Turvey, this case, it needed you, it needed Chris, it needed you to speak out. I can tell you as 3 attorneys sitting here, it is wild to me how few professionals have actually spoken out about how badly this case has been screwed up.
I've thought about that a lot. I'm glad you brought that up because I've thought about it a lot. There's nothing remarkable about what I'm doing in this case. Given my 30 years of experience with other cases, I'm just doing it the same way I do all my cases, following the law, making sure that Brady material is disclosed, making sure that testing occurs that should occur, giving good advice to make sure that everybody's rights are protected. My real question is, why are so many other people frightened and not speaking up? And the reason why, in my opinion, is that either one, they're compromised by money, or 2, they get a little close to something that they've never been close to before, a little power, a little celebrity, a little something, and they get excited. And they just run amok. They start doing things that are against their nature. And I'm used to being somebody who is not popular. I'm not interested in being popular. I'm not interested in making friends, and I'm preserving my professional integrity for my other cases. That's what I do. When I'm thinking about I have more than once dumped myself off a case because an attorney was engaging in inappropriate, unethical behavior. And I said, I'm out, and I'm not doing this, and you go do your own thing on your own. That doesn't mean I need to speak up about it because it's maybe just unethical behavior that I don't like maybe they're using cocaine, or maybe they're
like using cocaine, and I'm just like, it's just a personal preference over here. I'm not gonna deal with the cokehead. Go ahead over there. Can you imagine he would have said Adderall? No, because he knows that you can get prescriptions for Adderall. But yeah, just maybe I just don't want to deal with your coke ass fucking wild thing. You don't want any of this, Dr. Turvey? I mean, it's just pretty funny, right? Some stuff has to make you like
cheating on their spouse, and I find that out, and I don't want anything to do with them. They're a hand grenade with a pin.
Yeah. See, it's like character things. So I think maybe a better word for him to be is like, I don't want to fuck with people that have just shitty character. Why are you telling me about how you cheat on your wife? Like, I don't give a fuck, but I think it's weird that you want to act like that makes you cool to me. I'm out. you know, like
pulled them. I don't want to be around when it goes off. Okay. But I think there's a lot of people who don't know how to behave anymore. I think we're missing people that know how to behave in the criminal justice system. I think everyone who's just trying to get their
I
glory.
think people are just too easily like swayed, you know, and it's like, why are there sides? I say it all day with like, but why aren't you just voting for people based off of like how they're viewing the issues?
And I want to ask this directly so everybody can know. How much am I being paid for this interview?
$0.
I'm not paying you.
That's right. Nothing. Did I ask for anything in exchange for this interview?
No,
Absolutely nothing.
No, nor would I already been paid for my time and my work on this case. I don't need money. Is the least of my interest because I'm protecting my reputation for future cases. Right. I have other cases I'm working in. My reputation has to be protected for those, not just this one. Right.
And one of the things that grabbed our attention to you is when we were going through the reports. This is even before we had ever even talked for the first time for our pre-call, over a month ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Your report, it provided conclusions and your expert opinion, which is what so many of the prosecution's experts did not do. They couldn't tie things together. Most of them didn't even give an expert opinion, which is the purpose of an expert. But,
They didn't even go out and get experts until the defense had experts.
I would say the three of us did a pretty good job on your report when we were going through all of the issues with not even.
Nodal was hired immediately and went to the crime scene with Ann Taylor. Okay. Paulette Sutton was not hired until, what was it? 2023 October. She was first talked to and went to the house that already, it was just structurally still looking the same, but in 2023. But Matt Nodal was hired before Paulette Sutton. Think about that.
Been knowing everything we know today,
Right.
But you were very, very methodical and scientific, and your analysis was always spot on. And
Right. I didn't give you that report. Let's do a little timeline here.
No,
I didn't have
you
to
did
tell you
not.
my report. Yeah, I didn't have to.
No,
because-
I'm talking about the it's the one that was released. It is
That's right.
Sutton.
See how I love it. I love it how he stopped it dead in its tracks and said, no, hold on though. I didn't give you that. That matters to me. Like he's like, I'm not going to let that try to be misconstrued into whatever.
Sutton's response to my report, where she basically agrees with everything and says everything I'm saying is possible and comes to no real conclusions of her own other than he must have been naked running through the house committing the crime. That's how I didn't have transfer material on him.
That might be one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
It's her trying to make her client happy. This is the problem if you only work for one side or if you're trying to get work with another side. You twist yourself into a pretzel trying to make people happy. I never worry about making people happy. I know they're going to be mad with me when I'm done, so I don't care. But the point is, my report and the findings of my report were released in that disclosure and then published by Fox News back in January or February 2025. Then in March 2025, no, when was it? Was it this year? People Magazine, I think this year, got a copy of my report in Discovery, or at least they said they did. And then they produced a whole article about it. What's interesting is they didn't contact me to ask me for comment. So that was interesting too.
That is interesting.
Write down that. People Magazine. Where'd you get that from? See these leaks?
Yeah, but so my findings are out there. They're already out there. They're publicly available. And I'm one of the only experts whose findings.
Wait, what was the date on that?
When was it? Was it this year? People Magazine, I think this year, got a copy of my report in Discovery, or at least they said they did. And then they produced a whole article about it. What's interesting is they didn't contact me to ask me for comment. So that was interesting too.
That is interesting.
Yeah, but so my findings are out there. They're already out there. They're publicly available. And I'm one of the only experts whose findings from the defense are available. But I can tell you this, I wasn't standing on the corner by myself.
What were your biggest problems with Dr. Sutton's report, and at least the few conclusions that she had in that?
Well, she didn't really have any real concrete conclusions. It was all maybe this, possibly that. And then, of course, to She was trying to explain away the absence of evidence, right?
Now this is interesting to me. Trying to explain away the absence of the evidence. Okay. The absence of evidence is evidence, right? No? Let's see what he says.
Constantly trying to explain away the absence of evidence. That's not the role of a forensic scientist. They're not there to be an advocate. They're not there to help support the theory of their client. They're there to explain whether the theory the client has comports with the posture of the physical evidence as is.
Meaning that when you're giving the possibilities, if I only list down 3, but I know that there's 5 possibilities as why something could be, why didn't I list down the other 2? Well, that's confirmation bias. But how would I know that I shouldn't be writing those down? Like, you know what I mean? Did you have a conversation with the prosecution where they were like, hey, can you take off 4 and 5? Like, what? You know? That's why I always ask my science teacher, how are you giving anybody not A's? Because if there's science, there can be it could have happened because of this, it could have happened because of this, or it could have happened because of that, right?
Exists. Okay. So she sort of took on the role of advocate, and that's my biggest problem. And she knows better. She knows better.
And I know that one of your conclusions, at least as it came out in
She knows better than that.
Dr. Sutton's report and elsewhere, was that this crime was committed by at least 2 people, or certainly not committed by one person. Why do you come to that conclusion?
Well, this is not, again, this is all public. This is not me disclosing anything that wasn't already there. One, you have the amount of time that this would have taken, the amount of cleanup that was involved, and then also the involvement of the lower floors and evidence being moved around that has blood on it on the first floor and the second floor, as well as multiple weapons being used, at least 2 knives and at least 1 blunt force object, none of which were recovered or found, and then multiple methods of killing even on 1 victim, where you have blunt force trauma, strangulation, and then multiple knife wounds. So, and contemporaneous with the other victim being killed right next to her. And the ability to control people like that is very difficult. So those things led to the conclusion that at least 2 people were involved. You don't see that where just one person. There was one, I'll tell you, there's one case that was really interesting that I worked on. It was 2 women who were married and they got into a domestic dispute and they got in a fight in the kitchen. You know, the most dangerous rooms in your house are going to be your kitchen or your bedroom, because that's where you have interactions with your partner. And they got into this big fight, and it started out with one getting a knife and stabbing them. Then the knife broke because it was a shitty piece of shit, cheap knife. And then they used a screwdriver and that broke. And then they had a jar of pickles that shattered on the floor, and they took a shard from that and they were stabbing it with it. But it was all in the same location and all found at the scene and all tied to the one person. All right. In this case, whoever did this removed all the murder weapons from the home. They removed all the blood clothing that they wore at the scene from the home. And they left in a vehicle that is yet to be identified.
Kind of interesting how
the car down to the metal and tested it with everything they had. They couldn't find any evidence of transfer evidence from the crime scene into that vehicle. So it was eliminated.
Now, in your experience, is that
evidence of transfer evidence from the crime scene into that vehicle? So it was eliminated.
Now, in your experience,
he believes that Kohlberger's vehicle was eliminated. He believes that them taking apart Kohlberger's vehicle the way that they did is you're eliminating it being the car that left the crime scene. How are you like, so, and then their answer is no, somebody cleaned it up really, really good. I never thought about it in terms of like eliminating it, you know? But it's like, well, the absence of evidence is evidence. According to Bill Thompson, there was gunk though in there. So like, I don't know. Again, this is the prosecution's case, and you have to hold them to their case. They want to say that the killer arrived there and it's in this white vehicle, whatever vehicle comes at 408 and whatever vehicle is leaving her at 420. That's what they're saying. Hey, that's are killers in that car. They did that. Okay. So they need to prove that. And they're saying that that's Brian Koberger's car. Okay. And so then one should ask themselves why they didn't try to get their hands on that car and go interview him and do a simple thing that they've been doing with everybody, which is, hey, we're reaching out to people that drive X, Y, and Z on these two campuses. Can we come and inspect your vehicle? Can we ask you some questions? Every single person in this case, they asked questions of immediately when they got a piece of evidence and it took them towards them, right? I'm trying to still locate where somebody wasn't approached and asked questions of. I mean, you remember what Payne's advice was to everybody? Hey, don't use the radios. Don't approach the person today. You're just strictly getting us. It's like, think about that. Think about that now. So to approach the person, we just need, so then why aren't you just having them run queries? Well, because what are they, I guess this is how I'm trying to say it. You don't need to be out and about to do any of that. It's 2022. Okay. You don't need to be driving around looking for vehicles. You're going to just get these vehicles from the databases. But so here we're going to tell Pullman, which is, when did Pullman ever even get this information to do that? Because Payne didn't write up the email to send out to people until November 27th. Yet Pullman Police Department is already looking for just Elantras and it by November 24th, November 25th. But yet Payne has not wrote out an email and disseminated that to WSU and to Pullman. When did Payne disseminate an email? And that's where Blaker comes into play. Blaker was the one that was working with the Pullman Police Department, and Blaker has no fucking reports written from November. I mean, he does not write any single reports to say what he's doing over there with the Pullman people.
Experience, is that something that would be normal for them not to find, stripping that vehicle down to the nails and not finding any connection back to the defendant?
Well, think of it this way. You commit the crime, you got blood on your hands, you got blood on your feet, you got blood on your clothes, hair, face. Unless you go take a shower, which there's evidence that could have happened, because the first floor bathroom was completely cleaned. Could have, but that would have taken more time and required a lot of confidence on the part of the person. You know, somebody who was very
confident that no one's going to be calling the police.
Confident they weren't going to be interrupted. If they then moved into the vehicle, that might be true. Might be. But you'd have to show that evidence of that cleanup. And you have to sort of, so I can see the possibility. But it makes more sense if the person spent that time in the house cleaning up, which there's evidence there was time spent cleaning up in that bathroom with these clothes and with the removal of items and objects from the first floor bathroom.
I think the question that I know that got missed in all of this, but trust me, like, they did a great job, is there is no mixture from the two victims upstairs, any of their blood. None of their blood is in Xana's room. And so my question to Brent Turvey is that would require, if one person did this, you have to change between the killings on the first floor, on the third floor, and then the second floor. I mean, this is a must. This isn't just like no, it has to happen, because your gloves are completely doused in blood. Your knife is completely doused in blood. You have blood on you, and you're clearly, they're saying when you're walking these corners, you're making smudge marks and hitting. You cannot be dressed in the same clothing that you were from upstairs before you get into Xana's bedroom. And so that's where the change of clothes would have had to happen. And then it would have had to happen after, which not only is that you're changing the gloves, but you'd have to use a different weapon. I don't care if you want to say, oh, we ran underneath the wall, I got all the, no. But then after you commit your crime from that room, you're changing it because there's no, or you're cleaning it up to the point of whatever, but Ethan's blood is wiped and smudged on the top of the railing, and that's going to be heading you where? What are they doing over there? It's like heading down to go down to the first floor, and that's what the exculpatory evidence, in my opinion, was with what Bethany was going to be saying that. And then you got the Justin kid going to talk about the front door being wide open. Alley Tally, 20 memberships. If you turn green, Alley Tally turning you completely green. No halvesies here, all the way green. So for me, I would have asked Brent Turvey, okay, how did you size up the fact that there was no blood in Xana's room that traced back to Maddie or Kaylee? There was no mixture of any. Maddie and Kaylee is not mixed their bloods with any blood of Ethan or Xana. And I want to ask you this: if you were a prosecution witness, would you be demanding that more? You're gonna have to keep swabbing stuff until we can find a mixture of that. Otherwise, in my report, it's different than what I'm going to sit here and tell you guys is that I would never be able to tell you this was one person.
And Chris points out in his book that there was nothing remaining in that bathroom that would be normal to have, toothbrush, towels, normal things in that bathroom. Does that point to any?
More than that. Yeah, it's more than that. So you go into that. Every other bathroom has floor mats, toilet paper, garbage, dirty clothes, towels, bath products. You go into that bathroom on the first floor. There's nothing. I mean, there's some shampoo and conditioner, I think, in the shower stall, but there's no garbage. There's no toilet paper. There's no floor mats. Everything's gone. Everything you expect to be is gone. And that's a bathroom that's being used by other people. But that's not the most important. That's important.
And guys, that would be the bathroom that would have been utilized, unless they have an issue there with like people stealing stuff. But that would be the most used bathroom by visitors, next to the second floor one. The third floor is never going to be used by visitors, and it shouldn't be. Why are you going upstairs to use the bathroom up there? But you guys, again, you'd want to go and look for pictures in the past. Okay, you want to go through the phones of all of the victims and find where there's ever any pictures that shows the background of what that bathroom looked like, because that answer could be there. And maybe they're like, listen, we had it so bare like this because this is where we sent everybody that were like our friends. Here, go downstairs and use the bathroom down there. You're not using our. You get that? I could kind of see that, but you would need toilet paper. Maybe we use that bathroom because we're doing like handstand in the shower. We're doing weird drinking games in there. I'm just saying there could be answers to it, but you have to ask the question in order to get an answer out of it. And instead they just avoided it. And that to me has always been the problem, is the investigators are avoiding asking questions. And it's like, why? The bathroom, I thought for a second, when we used to have keg parties, we used to use our toilets or our bathrooms, and we'd fill up the tub with all ice. We'd put the keg in the middle, and then we would use it, and we would put all of our drinks, and it was a huge cooler. I mean, that's how we partied. We'd have our keg in the bathroom. I'm not playing around. And we used our toilet, our bathroom was a huge cooler. And so you'd put all your drinks on ice in there. But it's 2022 at the time. I don't know how these kids party. They carry around book bags. We never carried around book bags. So they're carrying around book bags. They're carrying around Borgs. We never carried around Borgs. We never carried book bags. I shouldn't say never carried book bags, but I just feel like it was always at the parties that we would go to. Like the baseball house, we always had it was keg beer, and we were all cool with that. We were fine with that, and we were doing shots. And we had a bottle, we brought it, or they would supply it. And then like we would rotate on who's throwing in the parties. Like we would always rotate like how it got paid. But like after away games and away trips, we would always have per diem money, like tons of it left over. And then we would throw that money in and fucking buy a bunch of alcohol and have a party.
But then you add that to the fact that there's a bracelet found on the floor in the bedroom to the right. You walk into that bedroom, you walk into that house on that with a stairway to the left and the bathroom in front, and there's a bedroom to the right. And in that bedroom, on the floor, police identified and photographed a bracelet that had blood on it. And they anticipated collecting it. And so they moved it to a location on the desk next to a computer keyboard and I think a power drink. Well,
that's wild, you guys. That's wild.
That item was left there, was photographed days later by another crime scene investigator still in that location. Never collected. Not on the evidence list.
How is that even
So
possible?
never tested then too.
Never collected, never tested, never even sourced. Well, how is that possible? I mean, the problem we have is we have a movie and TV idea of how crime scenes are processed. All right. If you watch the body cams in this video, it's very instructive on this case. And these are, again, they've all been released. And what it shows is people that are traumatized, people that are upset, people that are excited, making judgments and making statements that are unsupported. I think first officer seems to, I think it's a murder suicide. It looks like he killed her and she died, that kind of stuff. People say and do things. They decide what the narrative is, and then they start collecting evidence that supports and reinforces that narrative because that's what they're looking for. And once you do that, you're off the plot. All right, you're gone. You're done. You don't really have any idea what's going on. It happens all the time. I have cases where I'm looking at a group of people standing around talking to the police, and their feet are all covered with blood and blood spatter, and there's a murder weapon in the corner, and the officer never once collects their clothing or even notices the murder weapon because they're excited. Remember, these guys are not experienced homicide investigators. This is not what they do. Everybody there is brand new. They're new to the world of homicide, let alone mass homicide. How does it happen? Experience, lack of training, too much adrenaline.
Would it have been customary to leave the bracelet where it is and then it be collected without even moving it to the desk? I mean, that seems to be more logical.
Yeah. Somebody got excited and distracted. You would leave it there, take a photo in situ, then you put maybe a ruler down to give it a size, take a picture of that. Then you put an evidence placard down, give it a number, and log that in. Take a picture of that, and then you take close, medium, and long-range shots of each item of evidence, so that the purpose of doing crime scene investigation and documentation like this is so that you can take any piece of evidence that you found at the crime scene and put it right back in the crime scene where you found it.
Yep, 1000%. And remember, I was screaming this. I said, why are they using the first floor as a staging? They trampled all through the front door. Okay, they hadn't even ever processed that. They treated the first floor, that like whatever you want to call like foyer. I mean, they treated it as this is where we're going to stage. You guys, they have a trailer there. They should have never been standing actually right at the door. They should have been standing out on the street where that trailer was. Those officers. I mean, they keep they're in the. I just. They're like in the middle of the crime scene. But that bottom floor they were just stacking everything right there. It's just interesting. Very interesting. Like they already made up their mind of what happened at this. And I'm just like, how? I'd be asking those guys, hey, I need you to get out from over there. Like, if we're going to put the tape all the way out here, like, I have no idea what you're doing over there. Like what you're doing at the front door when the tape goes all the way out and like, where's it going? And at first they had it's really interesting because we watch, what's his name do it. We watch Snyder walk around the tape and he 1000% comes and goes where the garbage cans are and then comes across like where the driveway starts to come in from the street. He goes all the way across and comes up and uses like that fence line then.
You can't do that with every item of evidence that you've collected, then you have been negligent. Your job is to collect the evidence and document it in such a way that you can put it right back where you found it, to the inch. It's not that hard. It just takes time.
Were there other items of evidence found in like the spare bedroom that weren't tested or appear to have just been left?
There was a crock on the second floor bathroom that appeared to have bloody material on it. that was documented but never collected. One shoe, one crock.
And I'm
That, by the way, was the bathroom with the washer and dryer in it.
interesting. Now, to
So
your,
Did you guys just hear that? The bathroom with the washer and dryer in it. It has the crock in it, that one crock. And he's saying there was blood on that. Okay? Blood on that shoe. Dr. Turvey's report's already on record.
to your knowledge, Anne knew about these things as well, that they weren't the bracelet being lost.
Yes.
And I,
Hey, this is a really important part for me when I was listening to this. It was to understand Ann Taylor's knowledge of the case. How knowledgeable was she about everything that was going on in this case? Okay. And so this is a great question by Kristen. Okay.
interesting.
Documented but never collected. One shoe, one crock.
And I'm
That,
assuming,
by the way, was the bathroom with the washer and dryer in it.
interesting. Now,
So
to your knowledge, Anne knew about these things as well, that they weren't the bracelet being lost.
Yes.
And I know it sounds remedial asking that, but this is what people always want to say. Well, she didn't know, or this wasn't known to the defense. And
I'll give her more credit than you're willing to. She knew better than me most of the stuff that was problematic. That's one of the reasons why she had my respect throughout my examination. She had a encyclopedic.
There you go. That's why she earned my respect, because she did the work, you guys. She knew the case. She knew the case better than me. She was like an encyclopedia about the case. That's what made him. She earned his respect.
Knowledge of the case. More credit than you're willing to. She knew better than me most of the stuff that was problematic. That's one of the reasons why she had my respect throughout my examination. She had a encyclopedic knowledge of the case, back and forth. So any claims of ignorance at this late date are, she knew more than me, because I was giving her my findings, which again, all widely reported, but she was also getting findings from her other experts.
And so she's the one that is able to, that's how you can connect the dots, you guys. When you have a bunch of the material, right? And then you're putting it on a board. You're making a storyboard. You're making your timeline. You're completing the pieces of the puzzle that's needed.
And I wasn't getting it. By the way, I was not receiving that. I was not getting it because that was not my role. My role was not to evaluate the work of other defense experts.
And that's normal.
I know a lot of people want to comment that, oh, she was just saving that for trial. I don't believe that to be the case, but can you potentially elaborate if that is customary to not challenge the issues pre-trial and just quote unquote save it for trial?
Well, I'll respond in general without trying to get inside her head, because she obviously did not want to go to trial. That's not a secret either. She made a deal. Without getting in her head, I'll just say in general, absolutely. There are times when it is an attorney makes a tactical decision not to disclose something, but hope that it gets revealed on the stand. There are also times when you're barred from saying certain things and you kind of got to wait for the door to be open.
Exactly. So these are tactical strategies. So you are going to try to open up the door by asking certain questions. And then when people answer a certain way, it opens up the door. Okay. And so he's like, yes, there's trial strategy. Okay. And so I do believe 1000% that Anne was playing the long game with some stuff. No doubt about it. I believe that she only went certain lengths and so far with pain that she did. I believe, because this was working in her mind. Okay. But when you were given that Franks, that's a no hold. That's a all in. You got your Franks when it comes to the IgG stuff, right? And what you're saying is, and we have to go back and look at why they granted this full Franks for the IgG. And then everything else, though, she had to still earn a Franks hearing. It was like an evidentiary hearing. So I think I put one of my questions down is the whole way that you went about the suppression of evidence, and that you wrote all these different motions for each specific thing versus writing one motion. You know, like Shanna Gardner's motion, 12 pages with Jose Baez, Diane Menashe, best in the business right here. Okay. There's 3 different things that they're trying to suppress, and it's 12 pages. When here, Ann Taylor went with each thing that she was trying to suppress was its own motion.
So that you can address issues. So I would say it another way. Since there was no trial in this case, we can't know what was in anybody's head about that strategy. What I know is these issues were all brought to the floor. They were all understood by all involved, and there was an agreement across everyone that there was no direct evidence implicating Koberger at the scene. That was understood, very clear. Not something that was hidden or misunderstood. And again, that's not a secret. That's something that she was saying to the world at any chance she got. So, and by that I mean the filings that she made, which were public and that sort of thing. The world was watching.
We know that, guys.
Let's move.
That's why she was talking about it, and she just didn't hit this home. I don't think good enough. But it's all speculation. Hitler, we're going to allow people to just come in here and speculating to people just can't get on the stand and speculate and say, hey, that's suspect vehicle 1. And suspect vehicle 1 is Brian Koberger's car. Excuse me? And suspect vehicle 1 is doing all of these things. And you're saying that all of this is the same vehicle. And so Ann Taylor has a chance to either say, I think what she wanted to be suppressed was that she was like, the wording of how you're going to say, and it was about saying that this was all the same car, into saying suspect vehicle 1. And I'm over here just like, why aren't you just showing why aren't you showing an offer of proof that it can't possibly be the same car? And this is why. And that's an offer of proof, which would be like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to allow you to testify that this is all the same car. You don't have video evidence either that it's going and it's following it continuously. Okay. And then Hitler was like, well, yeah, no, you have to go back and like read how he ruled on that. But I just think that Ann made horrible arguments. There's a difference between a litigator and a lawyer, you guys. Okay. Not all lawyers are litigators. Okay. But all litigators are lawyers because you have to be one, right? And you need a litigator. Ann Taylor isn't a litigator, sorry.
Into the beer pong table that is known around the world, which also the White Claws, the box of White Claws that Chris brought up in his book that I think shocked all of us as well. Are those a couple issues that you could?
Well, the beer pong table is boring to me. I'm not interested in that. There's so many other bigger issues to talk about. Beer pong table.
God, I loved it when he said that. Me personally, I loved it. Okay, absolutely loved it. Boring to me. Boring. Absolutely boring. I agree.
Table has no relevance in my mind whatsoever. But
because it leads to all speculation.
Can say that the White Claw box had blood on it, and you can see it photographed in different places around the scene. So it's being moved.
He's saying that the White Claw box had blood on it. We're going to go through and try to find, because remember, they did not get us every picture. So I think a good FOIA is to do a FOIA request and to see, is there blood on that White Claw box? Okay. But that means when the White Claw box was put on top of, it means it was wet. It means the blood was wet, right? That means if I'm doing my math and Dylan is over here saying, I saw Maddie, Maddie was carrying a case of Claw. That's Dylan's words. And you saw her walking back to the house. who brought up the claw and sat it on top of the railing? On top of where Ethan's blood was. On top of where Ethan's wet blood was. Is that what we're talking about here? Let me just tell you that Mama Five says Lakeland drinks White Claw. Yeah. Was maybe she being confused? Did Lakeland actually have the case of White Claw and not Bethany? But I'll tell you what, based off of what he's saying, is that claw that's sitting up on top there, it couldn't have been something that came way later and was placed there and got blood, right? Because it's going to be dried. I mean, how long does it take to dry? Do a little testy. But that goes to my theory, which is, when did crime bedroom Xana's occur, and when did crime in upstairs occur?
There are a number of items of evidence that got moved around, whether by police or other people interacting with the scene, like the knife that got used by the first gentleman in the door, the friend who entered the house to clear it with his knife while everybody else was hiding in the bedroom. You know, that knife.
Everyone else was hiding in the bedroom. Okay.
You know, just sort of moved around. That's interesting to me, but I want to say it this way, and I don't want to be condescending or mean, but I think people have focused on these things because that's what they had. And for me, it's interesting. I'm glad that Chris is talking about it in his book. I think it's interesting. A lot of people have been talking about it, but to me, it's like 25th, 26th, 27th thing on the list. You know, just way down there.
What are 1, 2, and 3 on your list?
Good question.
The sheath, the hair, and the cleanup, and the lack of evidence tying Koberger to any of it. Lack of physical evidence.
Is there any?
But also, what's really important is the 911 call. The 911 call is full of false statements by the people.
Boom. The 911 call. The 911 call. And there it gets mentioned. The 911 call.
What's really important is the 911 call. The 911 call is full of false statements by the people on it about what's going on and what happened and what they're observing. So all those things together are way more important than whether or not there was something on the beer pong table or whether there was a crash. Whatever. That's interesting, and it's part of the narrative. I get it, but it has no interest to me whatsoever.
So what is specifically interesting to you about the 911 call?
Wait. I was like, Sam, I want to get into that, but I just have one more question that we could finish here
Sure.
before we go into the 911 call. Do you believe the narrative is on par with what is being represented by the prosecution? And I think something that people don't entirely get in Chris's book is that I don't know that Chris entirely believes that the narrative as is what it was claimed. They're going off of what was presented by the prosecution and what was known to be true, or at least that was the presumption. Do you believe that time frame is actually the time frame of the murders? Because we hear screams as early as I think it's like 1:40.
I mean, okay. I mean, it's just not that interesting in my opinion. I mean, it's interesting to people who are trying to get through the granular detail. I get it, but for me, it's not that interesting. There's much bigger, much more important issues.
There's much more important issues. He's not saying that's not an issue, but I think what he's getting at is that you want to take on the role, like if you have a task, okay, and you're trying to get to the bottom of something, right? Who would not all agree that the first thing that you'd want to do is test the hair that was in Ethan's hand? That's why it's number 1. Is it male? Is it female? Can we get DNA? Does it match anybody in the house? So, because then once you peel, you have to, in order to peel back your onion, you start, and then you're going to get into it, right? But you can't peel an onion by starting in the middle. So that's where I think like the little granular stuff that he's saying that people want to focus on, you need to start to the outer, and then you're going to get to that, you know, because you may not even have to go. What he's trying to say is you may not even have to go to that. Don't you think it'd be really ironic? Let's just throw up a hypothesis that it was, I don't know, pick anybody that is claiming that they've never been inside that house, and that's Ethan's hair is in his hand. Ethan's hand has a person that's claiming that they've never been inside that house before.
You say something that's going to be offensive, and I don't mean to offend anyone. Unless you're, if you are offended, try not to take it.
We have thick skin.
Thank God. I don't believe anything. Belief is a word that means accepting without proof.
Remember, I went through this over and over and over with those every single day the Moscow Police Department put out. We believe that the 4 victims were at home by 2 and asleep by 4. We believe. Versus the language of we determined. I love when he talks about this. And I said, you guys believe is fuck. When you see that and a cop is putting that out there, how have you not determined that yet? We believe that everybody was home by 2 and asleep by 4. Yeah, you believe that. Fuck your belief. I don't give a fuck what you believe. Okay? You believe that Santa is still real. I don't care what you believe. What can you prove? When you say the words, we've determined, how did you determine that? You're going to have, there's an answer for that. That's why for Brett Payne, when you're writing stuff in your probable cause affidavit, how did you determine that? Who told you that? I'm going to know. In my 18 fucking pages, and I'm writing this up, I don't care if it's a work product of all of us working together. I know who did what. And if I don't, I have no business writing that shit.
I don't believe anything. I don't believe anything. I don't have any of that issue. All right. So, so when you ask me, do I believe this? Do I believe that? I don't believe anything. I require proof. I base my findings, my expert forensic findings, on facts and evidence. Right. I don't do belief. And I don't do guesswork. Use what the evidence supports and what the evidence doesn't support. And that's why I say,
God, I love it. It's a waste of fucking time. It's a waste of time. We need to focus on the issues and we need to get solutions to the issues. Okay. And you need to start eliminating things. These are all possibilities. Let's start eliminating. That's the job of the police. If we need to be doing that, then they didn't do their job. And I have no idea who the fuck is training people in Idaho.
the beer pong tables, it's like a little stroke fantasy of a bunch of fangirls and fanboys out there who really just want to get into that granular detail that doesn't move the needle. All right. I know that sounds offensive, but that's the way it is.
It's not offensive at all.
Thank God.
It's very straight up. All right. So with respect to the 911 call, and I just want to say it was actually the 911 call. I think it was Outcast's original 911 call, or that he did. That was what got us into the case.
Oh, really?
Was the 911 call, the 8-hour delay. How is this even possible? And I remember playing it for Sam, and that was truly where we got involved in this case because it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense.
Well, what we're learning, of course, what we're learning is what all of us who were examining the case already knew at the time, but now is publicly disclosed, is that during the 911 call, there was the inference of the claim that they just kind of woke up to this. Well, no, they didn't. They were on their phones the entire time.
Number one, take out your pen. Number one, remember, even in Dylan's interview, even in Bethany's interview, we just woke up just before this happened, like before we called you. No, you did not. That's a lie. That's a false statement. Did you forget what you were doing all morning? I mean, that's a false statement. You guys, when people make false statements on 911 calls, in every other case, they get obliterated, usually by the police. Here, it's okay. Why? I don't know why.
Talking to people. I won't go into the detail of that, but they were all up talking to different people, right? So they weren't asleep. That's first thing. Second thing is they claimed that they saw one of their friends unconscious in their room. Well, each of the two rooms has two people in it with blood everywhere. And the idea that they could see the person non-responsive and not see the other dead person next to them and the blood everywhere is sort of nonsense. So let me just say a generic thing that may or may not be applied to this case. One of the only studies on stage crime scenes that have ever been done was done by me some years ago. And one of the key elements that you find is that people who stage crime scenes, they want someone else to find the body.
They want someone else to find the body. You hear this?
The elements that you find is that people who stage crime scenes, they want someone else to find the body. They don't want to be the one who finds it. So they orchestrate events so that other people find it. Maybe
Well, my God, by God.
that's relevant here, maybe not. Investigatively, I'd want to look at that. But I do know that the 911 call is full of things that don't make any sense. All right, like I just said. And that by itself should be a problem for anyone examining this case.
And it had to first start with the police. Do you guys know that in the Dan Moore, Brian Drake murder case, Mike Van Leuven didn't go and listen and enter into evidence that 911 call until like right before the preliminary hearing. And they didn't arrest somebody for 6 months in that case. So like Brian Drake is killed March of during COVID, March 2020. You're not entering into evidence when you go and get the 911, all the different calls because they were transferred. You're not entering in this to evidence. And then you arrest somebody, which happens at the end of August? And then right before their preliminary hearing, you try to stuff in like this phony fake 911 call that has no chain of custody. And then you want to try to introduce a 911 call through the 911 caller whose cell phone does not have a 911 call on it? The fuck out of here. That's Idaho. Now, in this case, they want to just ignore the 911 call, just like they want to do in the Drake unsolved murder case right now, whose wife was the one that called 911 saying that she was on the phone with him when he got shot through a window. Girl, please. I go ahead and I do FOIA requests to find the initial 911 call. There is no 911 call that ever originated in Kootenai County. Where she said she was and what she said transferred and da-da-da and da-da-da and da-da-da. Now we come to this case, 911 call. It's like in Idaho, they don't give a fuck about the 911 calls, but it's a very important piece of evidence. Mind-blowing to me. And it's the same investigators in both cases. District 2, Idaho State Police. This is me calling you the fuck out.
Is there anything else significant about the cleanup, or is there any other direct evidence that you see outside of what you mentioned that evidence is a cleanup?
Well, other than the cleanup. Not to make fun, but
like, for example, the commentary that somehow the diluted blood could be mixed with saliva. There's nothing that you saw that would support anything wild like that. Obviously, I feel kind of embarrassed asking that question.
We laughed with Chris about that. The amount of saliva that would have had to been produced.
I don't even want to comment on it because it's such a bizarre.
It's so silly. He's like, this is just so silly to me. Like, I don't know.
Everyone's focusing on this because that's what they've had for years, and they're focusing on this little bit, and they're ignoring the planted sheath. They're ignoring the untested hair. They're ignoring the timeline. They're ignoring the cleanup. I mean, come on, get back to reality.
He said they're ignoring the timeline. Yep. He says we have the sheath, the hair that wasn't tested, the timeline, and the cleanup. That's how he just labeled that off right there. They're ignoring. Those are all things that are being ignored. Ignored. And who's ignoring it? Again, who's ignoring it? Because if you're going to give a pass here on these investigators because they're just aren't used to doing stuff like this, all right? Who's ignoring it? Then the prosecutors are? Who's the FBI? I mean, who's ignoring it? Because if you're going to give a pass, who are we giving passes to? Who gets a hall pass here? They're used to doing minors in possession. Who wasn't even in possession of anything, but they're giving tickets to people, minors in possession, but they don't have anything in their possession. Explain that. Those are the tickets that they're writing on campus. And then it just, wow. I mean, can you imagine Maury on the stand? Can you imagine? I think Blake would have been your best seasoned person. But Maury and Payne on the stand, I don't know. I don't know. How many times did they say that? What?
It does seem interesting to me that whoever did it was able to take away all evidence of clothing, weapons, anything used in it, but forgot the sheet.
Well, the sheet was.
And see, John did a great job with what he means there. And John, it was John. Why am I saying John? Okay, I'll tell you why I say John. Because one of our good friends who we talked to, his name is John. Ron did a great job there because he's basically saying there was this big cleanup, yet the sheath was forgotten. Okay. And it's like, and then Turvey says, yeah, because the sheath was planted. It wasn't forgot. But where Ron's going with this is exactly what the point is that if there is this cleanup, one cannot possibly miss this sheath that's just sticking out like a sore thumb on right where it was, right? If it in fact was there, but yet it totally misses to, oh wait, I should probably grab that. And he's like,
Wasn't forgotten. It was
used in it, but forgot the sheet.
Well, the sheet wasn't forgotten. It was deliberately placed. So, because there's no way to get it. And it was deliberately placed after initially being found on the floor.
boom. It was initially found on the floor and then deliberately placed. And so the question, the follow-up right there is, wait a second, do you think that is there any, I shouldn't say the word think, was there any ever talks about this sheath potentially belonging to Maddie or Kaylee, specifically Maddie, seeing as it was her room?
That's not me saying that. That's the police report saying that and the photograph saying that. I'm not disclosing anything secret here. This is exactly what the narrative has shown and what the evidence has shown. It's just nobody wants it. The problem I'm seeing with this case over and over again is the people who want Koberger to be guilty, they're willing to overlook huge holes in the narrative. They're willing to overlook massive amounts of evidence that point in other directions. And the people that want him to be innocent are focusing on the granular detail that's not relevant because they don't have access to the actual evidence.
Bingo. That's why it's like, sit here and I'm not going to hamster wheel shit. We got to go out there and get the material. Give me the material. Okay, we're going to have to add Madonna's Material Girl to our fucking song choices. I'm a material girl.
Or they maybe have access to it, but don't have the ability to assess it, examine it, and interpret it in the way that a forensic scientist does.
Do you view the cleanup as exculpatory evidence in favor of Koberger? In other words, that the fact that the cleanup happened really leads to the inescapable conclusion that he couldn't have done this in the time he allegedly had.
Well, let's just clean that up a little bit and just say it this way, very simply. What happened at this crime scene took way more time than the prosecution has allotted for Brian Kober to be responsible.
Period. That's what we've been saying. And so the question that I had as the follow-up is on November 21st, they thought it was so important a week after the murders to go and do dry run tests to see if one person could commit the crime. What? That means you're putting, like, where are you at with your evidence? You don't even have anything back from the labs. What do you have back that you're even, what the fuck's going on here? Why would that be in your brain to even go and do that? Well, because you're what? Ingesting right after you have these girls' cell phones and these text messages. And what they're saying then in their interviews, right?
What do they got? You somewhere, depending on the narrative they give, it's somewhere between 7 and 15 minutes. This would have taken much longer to do that. More importantly, the proof that they had of this was they had an officer run up and down the stairs to try to, show that he could do all this really quickly.
And then he comes with it. And fucking comes with it. And I was losing it last night. I was like, Brent, am I on payroll? I swear to God, you guys. Kristen, Sam, Ron, cha-ching. Fuck yeah. If this live isn't played at CrimeCon, it's a crime.
Without a cleanup. But even so, the problem with that is he knew the house. He knew the routes. He knew the rooms. This is not a home that existed based on the floor plan that was filed with the city or the county or wherever. You couldn't go to the city and the county and get a floor plan that matched what happened here because the owner had transformed the interior into a living quarters for these students, right? Putting at least 2 bedrooms and a bathroom on each floor. Okay? But the way it was laid out was so weird that if this was your first time in there, you're going to be lost. And if it's dark, you're going to be even more lost. You're going to be searching. But instead, this offender went right upstairs to the 3rd floor, attacked the girls and killed the girls up there, then encountered Zainab in the kitchen on the way out. And she ran down the hallway and they chased her down and killed her and killed Ethan as well. So
see, that's what I think. So right there, he kind of says a little bit of his theory. His theory is that when, after what happened upstairs, going downstairs into the kitchen, okay, is when Xana got encountered, like physically in the kitchen. Okay. Well, that doesn't make any sense because why didn't Xana then run out the slider? How are you gonna run to your bedroom when you have people that are coming towards you? You know what I mean? To me, that defies logic. Unless you didn't think, okay, so think about this. Unless you thought that these people were just fucking around and that they're frat people. Or that you know, did they leave for a little bit and then say to themselves, fuck, we got to go back. Xana saw us. What? Yeah, we got to go back. Because that doesn't make any sense to me. Because why would Xana run towards, unless she knew the people and the people at first didn't do anything to her. So I'm just, to me, I'm trying to size that portion up. And if, or is it like, this is what he's saying, like, that's their theory.
That doesn't kill the girls. But if this was your first time in there, you're going to be lost. And if it's dark, you're going to be even more lost. You're going to be searching. But instead, this offender went right upstairs to the 3rd floor, attacked the girls and killed the girls up there, then encountered Zainab in the kitchen on the way out, and she ran down the hallway, and they chased her down and killed her and killed Ethan as well. So,
what evidence? I think in Chris's book he mentioned that it appears there's evidence that Xana was first encountered at least by the killer or killers in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Is there evidence of that? Because a lot of people have tied. There was initially some an indication that Xana's blood was on the beer pong table, which turns out that was a mistake by Sutton. Was it, what other evidence was there of Xana initially being encountered in the kitchen area? Or
Ethan was drunk and asleep in the bedroom. Right? They'd all been out drinking that night. Okay, they were all intoxicated. So he's asleep in the bedroom. She orders her food. She receives her food, and she's eating it in the kitchen. Part of it can be found in the kitchen where she's eating, and she's on TikTok. You know.
And so this is perfect. This is where it's just like, yeah, I think actually we can actually help you out a little bit even more with this, because, you know, I just don't think that, I mean, who's Brent Turvey working with in terms of like, if to really look at all the evidence and consider everything, because I think that there's a way better explanation than that to explain the evidence.
Through TikTok and doing stuff. Then you find some of that food in her bedroom. All right. Those two things show she was started out in the kitchen eating and then wound up in the bedroom, because that's where
because there's a plate. That's the big thing, is that there is a plate. You know how sometimes you'll get your food and then you'll just take your bag and you'll go to your room and you're just eating straight from like the bag. You got your cheeseburger, you pull that out, it's in your wrapper, so you're eating that, and then you're taking your fries out, okay? So there's no plate. But here he's saying that there's a plate with French fries, and there's also every container that came in the bag, the containers and the bag is in the kitchen. Okay? And then that would mean that you're using your plate and you took whatever you got, put it on there. And then if you used any of your sauces or whatever, like we were pointing out, the sauces were interesting, because I believe that the Taco Bell back in 2022, they were doing a jalapeno sauce, and it came in like a little extra container. Anyways, we did a lot of research on that, but it's like that all happened, and then you took then your plate into your room. Or somebody that was eating it all came in there walking with a plate and witnessed all of that and fucking lost their mind, and oh my God, and threw the fucking plate and ran out.
we know that's where she died. And by the way, I don't want to be glib about this. She put up a fight.
When
She
he said
fought
this,
I've never seen anybody fight. She fought like crazy.
I thought about that. Like long and hard. That Xana, we've always known that, right? That Xana put up a fight, like a really, like she fought her ass off. He says, she fought. And so now I think about this, ready? Was she fighting a female? Is that why? Was her fight with a female?
She fought like crazy. It was tragic.
And the fact, can you really argue with a straight face that there was no cleanup, given the lack of any bloody footprints or anything other than some stray drops on the second floor?
No, you can't. This crime resulted in massive amounts of blood, especially the third floor where the two victims were killed there. There's no blood on the floor. Those victims never got out of bed. They were killed in their bed. All right. Ethan was killed very quickly while trying to defend himself on his back from a sharp force weapon. Zaina was killed outside the bed, next to the bed, with blood getting everywhere all over the floor. There's no way the offenders in this case didn't get blood all over their feet and all over their clothes and then transfer that as they're walking out, especially given the fact that the lights are off and it's nighttime or early morning. Okay. So the fact that we didn't find any footwear patterns in the blood from that location.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Indicates a cleanup of those items by default. Okay.
With respect to the one shoe print that they were able to find with the Amito Black right at the opening of Dylan's door.
Right.
What can you tell us, or what did you find interesting or important with that?
I didn't, there's no value to it that I can see, because we don't have other footwear patterns to compare to or discuss. And I would leave that to to me, it's not, it doesn't move the needle, doesn't tell us anything other than if somebody had been that close to her and chose not to kill her, that didn't make any sense. But her whole narrative, the problem is I know more, but I'm not telling because.
There you go. There it was. And that's where we're going to stop. That's where I wanted to stop. Because also I just had a bombshell revelation in my brain and I can't even undo it. I just freaking, oh my God. But right there, it's a good stopping point, because then tomorrow, you guys, he knows things that we don't know, okay? Or that he thinks we don't know. And it has everything to do with Dylan's narrative, everything that's in Dylan's phone, everything about Dylan. That's just one thing. Listen again.
And chose not to kill her. That didn't make any sense. But her whole narrative, the problem is I know more, but I'm not telling because there's a whole narrative of things that she said that don't line up. And so that's the problem.
And that means we don't know because it's the Fed's shit. The Fed, okay? The Fed interviews is the only thing that we don't know about Dylan. Everything else about Dylan we know. We have the Moscow Police Department reports. We have the Idaho State Police reports. We don't have the motherfucking Fed shit. We don't have the fucking diaries. Those things are not public. Okay. Give me that fucking Fed file. All right. Dylan was interviewed at least once, if not, I believe twice, by the feds. Okay. We don't have that. That's not what's public. Okay. And also there's phone records. There's deleting. Thank you so much. We're going to be back. Truth and Transparency. Again, the name says it all with the channel. There will never be sides. Okay. You're either all about getting the truth through transparency, right? Which comes from our, the trial system, not some plea deals, back rooms, bullshit like that. Okay. Truth and transparency. What happened? And if he's saying, and this evidence is pointing to the fact that there is more people involved, this did not happen in this time frame, you're not accounting for stuff. You can have this narrative all you want, but you're going to get torn up in a courtroom because all of this other stuff is just overshadowing it all. And you don't want to have answers for it and you just want to wish it away, go right ahead. But it doesn't change it. Okay? And so we the people, we got some power here. Okay? We have to put pressure where pressure is needed, and it's for disclosure. We need things to be disclosed. Okay? We need the information of where these reports came from. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to the subscribers, lurkers, members. At the end of the day here, you have a say. Thumbs it up, thumbs it down. Make yourself known. Peace out. And again, give kudos where kudos is due. Great job. Thank you for joining Brent Turvey with Kristen, Sam, Rom, Custody Queens. Off the clock. We'll see you in the next one.